campaign and the commitment that you all have made in making those projects possible. We are nearing the end of that whole campaign, with the last project being our visitor center at Camp Foster, just restructuring the layout of Camp Foster and enhancing security and overall experience there at camp. And so to this point, we've raised north of $10 million through the support of the county, cities, private donors, grants, and other things. And through your support, it made us eligible for a number of grants. And so again, I thank you for that as well. And so I know I'm at the top of the agenda, and I don't want to hold this up as you've got a lengthy morning here. But just as you may wonder, how is the Y doing? How's camp doing? We're growing. We're growing out of the pandemic, just in terms of our main sources of revenue or programs and membership. And membership at the peak of 2020 was down 30-some%. We are climbing back out of that, and where our pre-pandemic numbers are. And camping is continuing to grow with staffing. And as you've probably heard from a lot of people, that's a limiting factor on the number of levels for all of us, but optimistic about where we're continuing to go. And so I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you'd have about anything, but just more than anything, want to say thank you for your support.
What building are you working on now?
Right now, the next project that we have is the visitor center at Camp Foster. Really, in terms of camp's layout, it used to be 25 acres on East Lake Okoboji. Now it's 200 plus. And so really moving our business operations to the front side of camp to, one, be able to stop unnecessary traffic into camp year round, especially when our summer activities going on, a number of other aspects that way. Plus just giving a welcoming face to where people actually know where they go when they come into camp, as opposed to driving through the woods and trying to figure out those aspects. And so that is our last core project of this campaign. And we're about 500,000 short of where we want to be on that. We have some verbal gifts on that for 2024 that we're working on cleaning up, but our goal is to finish out that fundraising in 2024.
I was out at camp for Fall Festival and saw a lot of the work that had gone on, Andrew, and I think having that welcome center, even security wise, just a very wise move to have that outlet there. And I've been a member of the Y almost since the doors opened many years ago, and of course sat on your board for 6 years. And I just continue to applaud you for all the programming, whether it's exercise or a lot of youth programming, and your volunteers, your staff do a lot for the community. So just thank you.
Oh, thank you. We will this coming spring, before Memorial Day, we'll have an open house at camp to invite everyone out just to see the changes that have happened, not only through that campaign, but we've had some private gifts on some other projects out at camp. And I think oftentimes people don't get to see what really happens there. And we also want to make sure that people know that it is a space that can be utilized for the community. We're happy to partner with the chamber on programs like that. We work with our school districts. School of the Wild through Spirit Lake was hosted at Camp Foster this year, and be able to showcase that for everybody. And so you all be invited to that, and I encourage you to visit. But also, I apologize if you had any complaints about traffic on Center or 41st Street, as we hosted a swim meet and youth basketball at the same time, which was a little hairy this past weekend. And so we had a couple hundred people rolling through the building at various times. So if nothing else, again, wish you all a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Okoboji Tourism Annual Report.
Hey everyone, I'm Rebecca from Okoboji Tourism, and I'm joined today by some of my friends from the Chamber and Tourism. So I have Blaine and Dara and Matt Lang and Andy Lux here. And so it's nice to have their support as we're here today to thank you for funding in the past and also request future funding in the future. We had a really good year in tourism. We continued to see growth, and our businesses saw a lot of positive feedback from our visitors. So we would request that we have funding in the amount of 28% of hotel motel tax in the future. And this will be used to further market and promote the Iowa Great Lakes area to potential visitors. So do you have any questions?
Yeah.
But thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
And thank you to all the representatives who are here today with you.
Okay, our next item up for approval is a liquor license for Okoboji View Golf Course. Their insurance agent is limited liability. Well, it's a limited liability. And Grinnell Mutual is their insurance agent.
Motion to approve?
Okay, thank you, Kim.
Second?
Thank you, Jeff. It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. Kim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Bill is aye. Our fifth item of business is the approval of the board meeting minutes from December 12th. Did anyone find anything objectionable or wrong?
No.
If not, I would take a motion to approve.
I'd so move.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll
It's been
second.
moved and seconded by Kim. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Tim?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And Bill is aye. Approval of drainage district claims. We have one from the Goodwin Law Office in the amount of $3,750. This mostly had to do with
DD 48.
Drainage District 48.
I move, we approve it.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Steve. It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion on this? Hearing none. Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And Bill is aye.
Now we need to listen.
Yeah, we to 9 o'clock yet? No, we aren't, so we'll keep on going. Discussion, action on recordings of the boss meeting. Barb, do you want to start us off on that?
Well, we're a little early. I think there were more people that were gonna be coming, but that's okay. Yeah, I can.
Ah, good, just in time, Melissa.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. I always come across, am I really loud on this microphone?
No, you're just fine.
Okay, good.
When you're out in Zoom land, you have to speak up.
Okay, great. Hi, Steve. So I did last week, the question of keeping our recordings of the Board of Supervisors meetings on YouTube after the meeting happens. Right now, they end. I mean, when the meeting ends, they're gone. So even if you get in 10 minutes late and try to catch the meeting, you can't. So I did a really quick search and I found 23 counties that in the state of Iowa that keep their meetings on YouTube for the public to see whenever. Transparency is always a good thing. The Woodbury County has 10 years worth of meetings that you can go back and look. So when they discuss any issue, if you look at the meetings and you want to see what the discussion was, you can go back and take a peek. And we need full, people need to understand what's going on. They need, if an issue comes up later and they're going, what's the history? They can pick up the history if they need to or want to. We've got the ability, we've got the technology. Nobody's asking for the special technology that zooms in on the speaker. You know, the way we have it right now, I think that works fine, for the most part. So it's not going to cost us anything. It's just, let's just save the meetings. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions?
Is there any added cost from YouTube or from Zoom to retain those at this, for future use?
I don't believe there is. I've never had any cost on anything like that when I've saved videos for future youth. You can, I mean, if you decide to get a subscription where you could earn advertising dollars, I think that's where the difference is, but I doubt you would
We ain't
even
getting no
want to do anything.
advertisers, I guarantee.
No. So, no, that's not an issue. Anything else, Steve? Or
Well,
any-
I would hate to see the county have to spend money to keep it on online when
Yeah.
it's always available as a transcript.
You're right, but there's no cost. You've already purchased the equipment. You've got the technology to do it. That would have been the cost if we didn't already have that in place. And you've got a wonderful IT person.
Who, Alyssa, do you have anything to add to this discussion?
I did have a couple of you guys ask me in our district who specifically is doing it. So Emmett and Clay's Zoom is what I found. Osceola does leave theirs out, and Plymouth, Sue, O'Brien, and Lyon don't do anything at all, so it's just whatever you guys decide, IT will do.
Okay. Any ideas, Jeff?
Well, in addition to having them available, there are a couple programs. One that I know is free download, OBS Studio, and you download that on a computer and you can record anything off of YouTube. You open the program and you flick your mouse and drag it over what portion of the screen you want. You have the whole screen or just the playback screen, and you hit record, and you can save that to your own files. And that's OBS, O as in O, and BS as well. You can fill that in. And as also Snagit is another one. I don't know if there's any cost on that, but I have used OBS before. It's very, very simple to use.
Okay, now, I go to work at 8. Our meeting's at 9. How am I gonna turn on my computer and get it to do that?
I believe, and I haven't checked this myself, I've never had to use it, but you can, like, you program your DVR. I want to record Star Trek at 8 p.m., which I do.
Okay,
But as I understand you, Jeff, that'd just be a private recording.
Yeah, and you can share it, you can put it on Facebook, just take the MP4 file and share it on the Facebook, put it on your page, it's yours to use, as long as it's not a commercial, like an NFL game or something. You can share it all you want, or save it in your files.
Alyssa, am I understanding correctly that if someone wants a copy, they can contact you?
Yep.
Get it right
Yep,
now?
I've had several people probably in here that have asked me, and I
So
try.
that's available, right?
Yep, I try to get it as quickly as possible.
You just send them the
I just
YouTube file.
no, that was too tricky for some people, so we just put in one drive. Yeah, not a big deal.
Which, I have had trouble getting those files to stream. Okay. I have had trouble getting those files to stream appropriately and being able to move ahead to what I want to see on that meeting. For instance, one, couple of months ago, I had to, I had to wait the full 2 hours to get to the end of the meeting that I wanted. And then, you know, you get your day going. I missed it and I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to get it on that one. So, I mean, let's look at the convenience of the citizens or of the people that want to see it. And let's give them a convenient time and the ability to just go back when they want to go back and to get the research without having to go through Alyssa to do it. You know, it's easy enough to do. We've got the technology.
I think our biggest fear is that people are gonna pick and choose what they record on that or take out of it. We used to have our email addresses on the website, Dickinson County website. Those are no longer there because I got a call from Chris Rowley asking whether I had written to her and asked her to transfer money to one of the local banks. I hadn't, and that was the end of having our emails posted. Personally, I'm with you. I believe in transparency. And I don't see, like I say, the only thing is what kind of hijinks can we expect if we do this?
I mean, you're already out there. The ability to record it is there if somebody wanted to use it from some sort of hijinks. So, you know, you're controlling it this way. And then the full transcript is out there. So you can say, I mean, the full video is out there. You can say, no, this is the way it is. So, I mean, either way, you're already on there. So I mean, it's 9 o'clock, 8:30 today in the middle of the week. People want and need to know what's out there, what's going on.
Well, and that's while I like the downloadable program, you can record all you want and you can set it to record when you want. You know, I mean, it's like having a DVR at home. It's just on your computer. I mean,
I guess, you know, I'm looking at the person that hasn't done that or doesn't want to do that or hasn't had the availability to do that. I mean, we've got a lot of people that technologically, it's not what they want to learn how to do and they don't want to figure it out. We're doing it already. Transparency.
would a
Let's
link be any easier for them though? I mean,
Yeah, it's on YouTube. I mean, they just go to the YouTube channel and they can watch it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it just sits on the YouTube channel rather than disappearing as soon as this meeting's over today. It's already being done. It just needs to be saved.
Well, what would you like to do, board?
I guess my concern with it was and still is, obviously you and the rest of us don't seem to have any problem and maybe even enjoy having the whole world see us on YouTube forever. Public officials, that's our gig. But put yourself in the position of somebody here on a drainage issue today. They don't like talking in public. They hate talking in public. The only reason they're here talking in public is because they've been forced to, because they're looking at a $30,000 drainage assessment. They don't want to sit up here and have this thing broadcast all throughout the news. You and I, we're okay with that. We probably enjoy it, but not everybody does. And I would rather err on the side of protecting that one person who's mustered all the guts they can get to come and stand on that podium and speak their piece. I would rather protect them one time and make everybody else mad 1,000, as long as we're complying with everything the state requires as far as transparency. And if you're concerned about anything I said, I mean, feel free, take whatever you want. But those people deserve just a moment of consideration in this conversation? I think they do. Not everybody wants to be a movie star. Some hate being here. Probably some here today that don't really want to be here.
I'm one of
They
them.
just soon not
but-
have all their neighbors. Just imagine how they could get blown out of proportion for them. That's my problem. Talk me out of it. If you can, great.
And
That's
we-
where I'm stuck.
And we do, you know, we post the agenda on Friday, which is 4 days in advance before the meeting, to give you the opportunity to be here at Tuesday at 9 AM if you're wanting to be part of a discussion that's part of the agenda as
Right.
well.
It is. It
You
is.
know, we give
It is.
ample time, especially to amend the agenda if needed. And if you want to talk on a matter, that's always something that we talk to Alyssa about. Like with Steve being gone today via Zoom, you can get a Zoom link in within 12 hours of emailing her to ask to be able to participate in that meeting.
I just think transparency is very important and the ability to be able to go back and see what's being discussed. You know, the ability to get, when you're in the middle of something, the ability to get those files, and Alyssa's very, very responsive, but you want information now. And it's out there all over the place. People, I granted, I mean, we had 3 nights of hearings of people that were, a lot of those people were scared to death to speak, but they did it. And I think we've got to be transparent as we can be.
Tim, you bring up a point I really hadn't considered with the people. I've seen some nightmarish school board meetings where people get up and maybe they wanted it to go viral or not. I don't know, but there's another aspect to it. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
We're in total compliance. The Zooming, people have the ability, the tech savvy ones have the ability to somehow record it too. I guess I'm not super strong on my position, but I do respect the people that don't like the cameras, and there's a lot of them that don't.
Well, they're already on camera.
I think my point just missing it
But
completely.
that's the point, right? I sit here and I keep hearing the word transparency. But I also, I'm one of them that requested Alyssa, and I talked to a lot of our surrounding counties. And as she said, there are a few of them Zooming, and there are many of them doing nothing more than come to the meeting. And so we are being as transparent as I believe we need, more than compliant with what the state requires. So I guess with what we're doing right now.
All right.
I respect the folks that come and speak, and what most of the counties told me is the record is the minutes, and those are always available.
The minutes don't tell you everything.
Well,
I mean,
I-
Jordan
again,
does
I
a
don't
great
know
job,
exactly
but
what it is you're
you
looking
know what
for.
you don't get all of the
So
information out of the minutes.
I'm comfortable where we are.
Well, if the technology wasn't out there, that it's so easy, and I know there's some people, I had to stop my parents' VCR from flashing 12 hundreds of times. But you know, when I was running for this office and it was all Zoom at that time, everybody was at home. I took this little deal so I could have reference and go back and watch meetings and learn some things. And that was the easiest. I pointed at the screen, hit record. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to record what goes on here. And that was just 2 programs that I brought up because I'm familiar with them, but I bet there's hundreds more. And if they have trouble, do what I do. I ask my grandkids to help me. That's just a thought. I mean, it's very
It is a
possible to
thought. I
record
mean,
these programs.
We could have someone sitting in here from the public recording at any time.
Yeah.
We do.
But the point is, and a lot of times we do, yes, but the point is, it's there. You guys have the ability to do it. Just, you know, make an ease of use.
Being live is about as easy as, I mean,
Well,
Well,
it's as
and
easy at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning.
you press record or set it to record. I mean, if you have cable or satellite, you either have a DV player, which you watch all the program, but you can't record it, or you get a DVR and you record all that you want. I mean, it's the same thing, and it's right here on a button.
Yeah.
And I admit I'm a
We're
little more
gonna have to
technical savvy
disagree
on
on
this
this,
stuff than
Jeff,
a lot of
but
people, but
I I'm looking at the 80-year-old woman that's sitting at home. You know, she has a doctor's appointment on Tuesday morning. She can't be here. What does she do?
Could someone help her? I mean,
What?
I mean, you can
I-
find
you
lots
know,
of instances of.
You
but-
can, and that's what you're doing. I am giving you, we've got it. It's there. Let's just keep it. Let's just keep it out there so people can view it and see it. Oh,
I've given my ideas on how to make it easy for people, but
Right, but the even easier way would be as if we just put it on our county website.
Mhm.
Of course, I don't know if 80-year-old woman could find the website, but
yeah.
probably get beat up by some
My dad
80-year-old
could.
woman after the meeting. But
who would do
I
all,
don't
I
know.
mean, it takes
I-
time to, load a, you know, if it's 2.5 hour meeting, it takes time to load that. I mean. There's a little work with it.
Yeah, on YouTube, you don't have to load anything. It's out there. You just
No, I mean,
hit
for
play.
someone here at courthouse, that
No, you
Barb, I load videos every
I-
day.
no, it's already on YouTube. You just hit save so it doesn't disappear. It's already there. It's there. Cause it's live streamed. And you just, when the live stream ends, you just have this, it just saves.
It's up to you guys.
well, honestly, I'm with Barb on this one. Sunday, I watched the Woodbury County meeting where they met with the legislators and talked about Senate File 718.
I did too. Those are all elected officials. Everybody in the room is an elected official in there. They're all fair game. I watched it twice. Amazing the contradictions, but anyway, that's another, in the law. But
Well, I want to thank you for sending that link
I
along.
think it's important everybody understand what a debacle that is.
Well, understanding's a whole
But I
different
think we
deal.
spent 15 minutes talking about whether we're gonna save this to YouTube or not. I think it's time to do something or move on. Don't you?
Well, I do. Somebody want to make a motion one way or the other?
I'll make a motion that we save it to YouTube in perpetuity.
Can you think of a smaller word for Jordan than perpetuity?
How about we just save it to YouTube?
Did you mean you wanted to save it to YouTube as long as it's free? Is that what you meant to say?
Yep, as long as it doesn't cost the county anything.
So put it on the county website on YouTube. The YouTube link on the county website. Is that what you're wanting?
Well, I don't know. Do we need to put a link on there? Or can you just go onto YouTube and
Well, the
Put
other
down
thing we could do is create
Dickinson-
a YouTube channel.
Well, we already have one.
Okay,
Yep.
and
Well-
you just,
But ease of access to be on the county website to go to that, because sometimes, I'll be honest with you, you have to refresh the screen right at 9 o'clock in order to be able to view the meeting. Otherwise, it won't come up right away, and that could just be me, but.
okay, well, I don't care if there's a link on the county website, you know.
But just to be clear, these will be live all the time, or are we staying how we're doing it now?
So do you want the saved meetings on the website to be saved to that channel? Or do you want it to be per request? As it
No, I
is
want
now?
them all saved.
Okay,
Okay, we have a motion. Do I hear a second? Steve, I'm afraid it dies for lack of a second.
Well, so be it.
Right. Perhaps in the future. Okay, moving on. Is it 9 o'clock yet? Yes,
Yep,
it is.
it
In
is.
fact, it's after. Are the people here that we need to?
Rachel, if you have anything you want to bring up, you can just put it on the table up here.
Okay.
And then we also have the HDMI cable up here to plug the laptop in if you want.
You can probably do it wirelessly too. You can use this cable. I mean,
What do you doing?
well, you go to room computer, she could, but this one. Oops.
If you want to just email it to me and I'll put it in your. Yep. Just a sec.
You could just come sit right here, plug in.
Low chair.
Slide it. Okay,
Please,
Yes, please.
please.
Thank you.
this includes both. But what's that? This is just for the first. All right. Okay.
Got it.
Nice, man. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Wallet? I'll share with you. This is D 19.
19. Yep, I'll take one. Just to have. Thank you.
Could you have them leave one for me for future reference?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Spence, could we have one up here for him?
Yep, and actually, I gave you guys the other.
I'll save this one.
I think we got this in email for you too, didn't we?
Yeah.
Steve, let me know if you can see the screen. Can you see that?
You bet. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Something.
You're here, landowners here for DD 19. We do have drainage district plats here, so I'll just hand a few out and kind of pass them around. We'll kind of talk through what all you're seeing on the plats here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yep.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. We're here this morning for actually a couple drainage informational meetings. First, we're going to do drainage district number 19, which is the plat map that you have just handed out. Immediately following drainage district 19, we're going to be doing drainage district 44. So you should have received a letter for one or both of those, depending on which districts you're involved with. Just to give a little context to this
Hey,
map.
Spencer, would you talk in the mic?
Yep. Oh, so we can hear on the.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. So just to give a little context into what is on the plat you're seeing there. So the plat, the red line around the outside is the boundary for the entirety of Drainage District number 19. So that's about 9,500 acres. What we're looking at in Drainage District 19 today is actually the main tile watershed. So it's going to be on that upper portion. You're going to see this other darker line in here, and that's the sub watershed. So begins up in section 25, and then goes north for about a mile, and then west and back southwest and around. So this map shows the entirety of DD 19, but what we're looking at is the main tile portion of the watershed, which starts kind of where that dark blue line turns to light blue there. So just wanted to make sure everybody understood what we're looking at. We'll talk through a little more of the particulars here in a second. So with that, I'll just give a quick introduction. My name's Spencer Peck. I'm with ISG. I'm a civil engineer working on this drainage project. Also have Rachel Millage here with me. She's a graduate engineer who's been working on the project with me as well. So today what we're going to do is just give you kind of an outline of the overall process of drainage district projects, what's been done so far, what information we have, get some input from you folks, and then talk about some directions we might move forward. So I guess with that, I'll just start with kind of a brief overview of the drainage district process. I realize that's a pretty complicated flow chart there, so I won't go through the whole thing, but really just what we wanted to identify with the landowners today is that how this kind of process starts. It could start in a variety of different ways, but in this case, there was a petition for drainage improvement filed for Drainage District 19. That petition was for the main tile, so that's why we're looking at that main tile portion of the watershed. That initiates some proceedings that are governed by Iowa Code Chapter 468. And then what happened is the board appointed an engineer, that was us, for the project. We've prepared a preliminary report, which outlines some specifics on the district that we'll get into here. And what we recommended to the board was, once we had prepared our preliminary report, we get all you folks together here today to talk about that, get input from folks on what they might be interested in seeing, and then we would be proceeding towards a final report and a hearing. So really, in the grand scheme of things, we're kind of in the early stages of getting landowners' feedback, getting input on the potential project, and then moving forward. So one thing just want to make abundantly clear, if it wasn't in the letter, the board is not making any decision today on whether or not a project will happen or anything. Today's purpose of the meeting is truly informational. We're trying to give you the information, answer any questions you might have, and also the board gets an opportunity to get some input from you folks. So just want to give a little context to where we're at today. Before any action was ever taken on whether a project could be approved, there does have to be a public hearing, which would be at a later date. So I guess with that, I'll just kind of give you an idea of where things are at in the process on the outline here. The petition was filed in June of 2023. Shortly thereafter, the board appointed us. We completed we call it feasibility study, or preliminary report on the project. We filed that in mid-November. Today, we're here for an informational meeting to get input to the landowners and share some information. And then proceeding forward, we'd be looking at potentially an additional report with some additional design options, and potentially a final report and final hearing. So everything kind of ahead of today. Those are potential dates. You know, kind of the way the process works is there's hearings that you have to have, and then public bidding procedures. So even if a project was approved, say at some point in 2024, the earliest you'd ever see any sort of construction related to that would likely be something like 2025. So just want to give kind of an idea of where things are at in the schedule and all that. So I think with that, we can probably move on. And what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Rachel. She did a lot of the design work for this project, so I'll let her talk a little bit about the existing watershed conditions, capacities. And just as a reminder, when she's talking through this, you can kind of follow along on your plat there. She might refer to like some sections where she's talking about the facility. So I'll let you take it away, Rachel.
So looking at the existing conditions and capacities, just a little bit of history that we found with the watershed and some of the prelim numbers that we found when we were doing our analysis. It's in Excelsior Township, and the main tile is providing drainage for
Rachel, could you speak more into the microphone, please?
There we go. So
Thank you.
the main tile is providing drainage to about 3,800 acres. We also look at elevation differences between the water, within the watershed to see, you know, if it has pretty decent surface drainage. And we found a difference of 132 feet from high point to low point in the watershed. You know, and looking at the soils, they're predominantly C and D in the hydrologic soil group, which means that they do need subsurface drainage to help them get adequate drainage for ag row crops. And then this main tile does outlet into the DD-19 main open ditch. We'll talk about that ditch a little bit when we go through the history of this district. So again, this is the district plat that you guys have. As Spencer pointed out earlier, we're only looking at that north portion with the main tile where it snakes up and then around that main tile loops through sections 24 and 23 and then down through 26 and 27, and it ends just across 200th Street in section 34. On this plat, you can also see the capacities. We'll talk about those a little bit later, but just want to point out that those are on the plat here and it might be a little bit easier to read instead of looking at the screen later. So the district was established in 1914. Throughout the district's history, this district actually has some pretty extensive history, which is exciting for us because it gives us a lot more information to go on and base our designs off of. So there was a reclassification done in 1984. That was part of some ditch cleanouts that were happening and some surface drainage improvement that happened. They did a reclassification of benefits after that. And then in 2017, they also did a partial reclassification for a couple different branches of the district, but we really haven't seen any look at benefits being reclassified since the 1980s, and we'll talk about that later as well. Some improvements that have been done to the district. There was a private surface channel that was put in 1985. This was the surface channel that we thought looped all the way through following the main tile up through section 27 that we discussed in our last presentation here, where we told the board that we would need to look into the history of the district to determine whether or not that was actually a district facility. And we found through our record searching that it actually was never followed through with as a district project. And so landowners put that surface channel in by themselves and it is a private facility. But then with that in 1996, the surface channel or the surface waterway was improved in section 25 and right of way was acquired for the district. So up through section 25, where that light blue line is on your map is a district facility. With that too, there have been a couple different repairs to the district. Most notably the main open ditch cleanouts in 1970, another one in the mid 1980s. Otherwise, it's just been routine maintenance. There haven't been any tile improvements. We did include a couple photos of this. So the one on the upper left-hand corner of the screen there is that surface channel that is a district facility heading off to the right. So that's the 190th Street crossing. And then we have a picture just below that on the bottom left of that surface channel through section 23, where it's now a private surface channel and it's not a district facility. And you can see that it kind of starts to disappear as you get farther towards the bottom of the screen and starts to get a little bit more defined as you get up towards the windmills in that picture. And then we also have included two different pictures of the main tile outlet. The head wall structure, as you can see, is starting to be in a little bit of disrepair there. We have included some drone footage here. It should just be a YouTube playlist.
We'll just add to that the reports we're referring to are available on the county website under drainage. Also, if you'd like to review them more, we're glad to email them or provide them to you as well. We also can share the link to this drone footage. I don't know if we'll be able to skip to like the fourth video, Jordan. If you go down to the bottom, you should be able to skip videos on the bottom left there. Yeah, click that, and then we get to like the fourth. Is it the fourth video?
I believe it's the fourth where the tile starts. Yep.
Yep. So there you can see, this is actually the existing DD-19 main open ditch right now, that we're looking at. And then the drone is flying up, and pretty soon here, you'll see the outlet of the main tile, where that head wall structure is at. I don't know if we could, can you skip ahead maybe? So there you can see the existing head wall structure. That's where the main tile starts. You can also see there that surface channel waterway that was constructed in the 90s. I think Rachel will probably talk a little more about the condition of the surface channel as well. One other thing to point out, actually, I don't know how well you can see it in the video, but there is a blowout of the tile just upstream of the, right there you can see it just upstream of the head wall there. So got a couple areas of wetness shown there. But what you'll see generally, what Rachel will talk about, is the condition of the surface channel from that main tile outlet up to that first road there, which is the County Highway 822. That it's actually in pretty decent condition, or it appears to be anyway. And then sort of condition of the waterway degrades from there. So I think with that, we do have, full drone flight of the whole watershed, and obviously glad to share that link to that information to anybody. But I think for time's sake today, we can move on from that. Hey, Jordan, can you click outside of the video so it moves it? There we go. Okay.
So now we're gonna kind of break down the existing capacities that we found through our analysis. We look at these by assigning everything a drainage coefficient, and so that's looking at how many inches per acre per day are drained. A lot of times that drainage coefficient is dependent on the tile capacity itself, but then it's also dependent on how much land is draining to any specific point in the tile. The recommended drainage coefficient for ag is typically a 1/2 inch. Sometimes we go up to a 3/4 inch drainage coefficient, depending on what the watershed looks like and how much surface drainage is available as well. So if you're looking at these existing capacities, they are on that district plat on that right-hand side. One thing to note is the surface waterway capacity on the district plat extends beyond what is district facility. Right now on the district plat, it includes everything that's also that private surface waterway or surface channel. On the table on the screen, it does stop where the district facility stops, which is at branch 294. So typically, or as we're looking at these, the existing drainage coefficient is running usually at about 0.2, 0.25. So we're getting maybe a 1/4 inch per acre per day of drainage. So that's about half of what we typically look at for ag drainage. The existing capacities, when you look at it, they're not super great. If we're looking at that half as a standard, we're only getting half of what we would want. The other thing to note is that these capacities are as constructed capacities. So these would be what the capacity of the system would be the day after it was constructed. It doesn't account for any sedimentation in the tile. It doesn't account for any tile blowouts or the tile falling into disrepair. So the numbers on the sheet really are best case scenario.
And yeah, I think I'll just add to that. This is very common for systems, that were installed in the early 1900s and have not been replaced since then. That design standard we see a lot from the old systems is about that 1/4 inch drainage coefficient. So not uncommon to see. Also, with the long history of the district, multiple attempts at drainage improvement, surface drainage. It was pretty obvious looking at the records that there's been some drainage issues, and the tile's been inadequate for quite some time. So that is not uncommon or surprising, but it is fairly inadequate. Like Rachel said, kind of that minimum recommended you're typically going to see for a drainage coefficient is around the 1/2 inch. We often see recommended higher drainage coefficients as well. So yeah, do we want to just take a second here? I know we're throwing a lot of information at you. In regards to the drainage district itself, the watershed, the process, the existing tile, any of the capacities, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask now before we start to talk about kind of what we could look at for any designs and proposed options? In the tile, you mean? So the only thing we found so far is that blowout at the head wall there. We have not done any sort of underground investigation of the tile yet. That's something that could be done if landowners desired, whether it was with televising, with a pipe camera or whatever. Generally, what we saw on the limited amount we were able to see it through intakes is that there was water flowing through it. But I can say from our experience of televising 100-year-old tile is that you are going to have some of those that are going to start to crack, and they may not have failed completely yet, but they're likely in the process of failing. That's pretty common on a system that's over 100 years old. Well, I think then what we'll do, and we'll have more time to have discussion after, but our preliminary report that we filed with the board does not have anything for proposed options in it yet. However, looking at the watershed, we have some ideas for some things we might pursue for proposed drainage improvements to look at this. So what Rachel's going to do is kind of talk through what some of that might look like, pros and cons of different options, and then get landowner input so we can sort of tailor our design towards what you folks are looking for. So.
All right, so this slide might be a little bit overwhelming at first, but I promise we will talk through everything and then we'll come back to it at the end. So that way we can have it in front of you while we're talking about what you guys might want to do with the district. So the first option that we would have is just doing a straight up tile improvement. So you would be replacing the existing tile with larger tile to get up to that 1/2-inch drainage coefficient. So you would just be replacing what's already there. General alignment would stay the same and you'd just be upsizing the tile. The second option would just be continuation of the main open ditch. So you would extend that DD19 main open ditch up farther. So that way you're getting more surface drainage and you're not having to improve you're not forced to improve the tile itself. So taking a pause and looking at those two options, the tile improvement typically tends to be a little bit more expensive on the install, but you're not taking land out of production. And so then on the flip side, you have that continuation of the main open ditch per linear feet. It's probably going to be a little bit cheaper to do the construction and the install on that, but you would be giving up land and the district would be acquiring right of way with that. Another option that we would have is doing a tandem surface and subsurface improvement. So it could be something where we kind of do what they were trying to do in the 80s and take that surface waterway all the way up through, section 26, 27, or 34. And we do something with a surface channel that may not be quite an open ditch, but then also improve the tile. The benefit of that would be maybe you don't have to go up 2 tile sizes, maybe you only have to go up 1 tile size, and then you just supplement that with surface drainage. And then as we look at all of these options, another thing that we would like to keep in mind is just the incorporation of storage. What we've seen in a lot of districts is if, 1 or 2 landowners are willing to give up some of their land and have the district acquire it, we can put in a wetland or some sort of pond, and that will hold the water and you can release it a lot slower, so you can downsize your tile downstream of that. A lot of times too, with the incorporation of storage, you can do it with whatever option you choose. You can do it if you choose to do a main open ditch extension. You can do storage if you choose to do a tile improvement or some kind of combination. The other thing too is when you incorporate storage, a lot of times it opens up funding opportunities and cost share opportunities, because we see water quality benefits come along with that storage. And so NRCS or IDOLS is usually willing to help with costs on that. So a little bit later on, I'm going to go through what we call a multi-purpose drainage analysis. And so that's where we kind of identify some areas that might work to incorporate storage into the district.
And just quickly to touch on that, you know, what we're saying right now is that these are all things that, you know, we could look at for proposed improvement options. There could also be a combination. Maybe there is a short ditch extension and a tile improvement, or a surface channel and tile improvement, and also storage. So it's not that these are all like unique options. They could kind of be combined. However, when you're looking at a district of this size, and this complexity with the surface and subsurface drainage, there is a lot of things we can look at. So that's why we want to get some input from you all today. Or if it's not today, it could be after today. You could share input with us on what you might like to see us take a look at with some of the proposed design options. So there's pros and cons to each, and we can talk through them a little more, but just want you to get thinking about kind of some of the different things we could look at for a design.
So I'll kind of run through the multi-purpose drainage management. We call it MDM, and that's how I'll refer to it probably from here on out, because it's a little bit of a mouthful to say multi-purpose drainage management. So I'll talk through that and what it was. The primary purpose of it was to find areas where storage would be very easy within the district to incorporate it. So when we're looking at multi-purpose drainage management, it's more of a holistic view of drainage, and looking at how can we incorporate storage, how can we incorporate wildlife benefits and water quality benefits by de facto. It's not that we're necessarily, you know, having the wildlife and the water quality be the main purpose of it, but those are auxiliary benefits that we get from it. So it's a holistic view, and a lot of times you also look at areas where, you know, you might be able to place cover crop or do nutrient management, or put in controlled drainage. Treatment measures would be like nutrient reduction through engineered practices. But what I really want to highlight on this slide is not the three on the top where it talks about the different kinds of MDM practices. What I want to talk about most is the benefits of it. So with that, like I was saying, there's a lot of funding and cost share opportunities because IDALs or the NRCS, state and federal agencies are really excited about incorporating water quality and wildlife benefits into these systems. The other benefit is that storage can decrease your peak flow demands. And so what that means is you don't have to put in as big of a ditch or as big of a tile because you can hold some of that water for later. And then as an auxiliary benefit, as I mentioned earlier, you do see some water quality benefits. And so that's just being good stewards of the water that's running through our lands.
And just to give some context to the map you're looking at, and multi-purpose drainage management approach that Rachel mentioned, this is the purpose of the drainage district is to drain lands for agricultural use, and that is what, you know, the drainage district is designed for. However, what we found is looking at this multi-purpose drainage approach, we can get a lot of really win-win type projects where we can get funding for the projects from state or federal agencies if we incorporate water quality benefits. We can also save costs on design if we implement storage. So Rachel mentioned looking at putting, you know, a storage pond in somewhere, and then after doing that, everything downstream of there, you can put in a smaller tile or ditch and save some money. So this is 100% voluntary of the district to participate in, but we have seen a lot of benefit to landowners, you know, beyond the water quality and other benefits. There can be a lot of benefits to landowners in considering these types of things. So to sort of facilitate that, this map just shows like some potential locations or practices that would be identified that could work for our district. And again, this is, you know, this is not, this map is not meant to, you know, we're trying to cite a project on your land or anything. It's just showing you what could potentially work and what is out there. And it's, you know, 100% just at this point to share the information and receive input from landowners on what you might or might not be interested in. So.
Yep. So this slide, it's just kind of an overview of all of the different multi-purpose drainage management practices that we evaluate. But the two that are circled are the ones that we are really looking at to help benefit the district. And so that would be grassed waterways or incorporating some of those surface channels that aren't quite ditches, and then doing a wetland restoration or a pond. And again, that holds the water so you can downsize your facilities downstream. So this is just a picture of the map. And as Spencer said, this is not, you know, this is what we're going to do, but it's just a map that shows here are the best areas that it might be possible to put a wetland in, or to incorporate storage. And so, if we decide, there's storage viability in one spot, maybe we only pick one of those spots, and it's not like we're trying to do 10 different spots in the district. It's just showing us what all of the different possibilities might be. So with that, I'll kind of dive into storage a little bit. We've talked about it with the MDM plan, but just kind of want to talk about it on its own a little bit. The benefits, as we've said, it increases the overall capacity of your system. So you're getting a higher drainage coefficient. You're able to reduce those peak outflows so the system isn't trying to handle all the water at once. And then you are building in efficiency to your system when you incorporate storage. And again, as we've said multiple times, there is that potential for outside funding. So some of the things, if you're interested in incorporating storage and maybe you think you have a good spot on it in your land, there are permanent damages that are paid by the district for that storage location. There are also temporary damages that the district would be able to reimburse. And then, we are careful with that topsoil as well around the pond. So we're leaving the land around the storage is viable. So this is from a project that ISG has done recently up in Minnesota. This is just kind of a visualization of one of their storage facilities that they've done. So up on the top of the screen is the city of Fairmont. And as you move down, you're actually moving upstream. So at the bottom of the stream is where a tile outlets into the storage, and then it travels through the storage and up through a ditch to the city of Fairmont. And actually, this was really interesting because I believe they secured funding from the city of Fairmont itself. This one is a little bit unique, but the city of Fairmont was using some of this water as drinking water. And so they were getting some of the water treated by this wetland. And so this is just kind of showing that, we can do visualization. We can show you what this is going to look like. We're not going to ask you to just do this blindly. And then the other thing too is funding can come from really unique places sometimes. So talking about not wanting you to go into this blindly, because storage is one of those newer things that we haven't really, as landowners in Iowa, haven't really done a lot of before. It's more popular up in Minnesota. We do pretty extensive modeling when we incorporate storage into these systems to show you what it's going to look like. And so that way we too can anticipate how the storage is going to work in tandem with the district facilities, and help size some of those things. So we use a model called ICM, and we use a lot of different inputs. So we use historic data from the ditch system and the tile system. We go to a land cover database and look at land cover because that affects the way things drain. We look at the soil data, we look at rainfall data, we look at elevation data. And then after we put all of that in and build our model, we also do extensive calibration. We're out there talking with landowners saying, is this what you're actually seeing on your land? With a 10-year rain event, do you see, a foot of water standing for 6 days, then it's gone? We also do drone flights after rain events, and we compare those drone flights to our models and say, is what's showing up on the drone similar to what we're seeing in the model that we built? Is the model that we built reflecting reality? And then we do site visits, as well as other checks and balances to make sure that our model is working correctly. So we build off the existing knowledge that we have, and then we verify the proposed design. So this is, I'm just going to go through some example modeling results. This is from a project that we were doing over in Osceola County. On the left-hand screen is the existing system. On the right hand of the screen is the proposed system. And then it's a little bit hard to read, but in the middle is a scale. So the blue is shorter time for ponding, and the red is longer time for ponding. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that yellow and red spot. That was an old lake bed, a historic lake bed that had been drained in the late 1800s. And so for this storm event, we were seeing water that was sitting there for over a week with a smaller rain event. I think this was a 5 or a 10-year rain event. So a pretty typical rain event, and water was sitting there and just sitting there. And the land, I mean, you could see the drown out, and on drone videos too, pretty obvious that most of this time the land was not productive. On the right is our proposed model. And for this one, it was for upsizing tile. And on the right, there's no red, there's no yellow. And so it's just kind of showing that with those improvements, there is land that's now productive and it's not getting drowned out every 3 years, every 5 years.
And, you know, really the purpose of the model, especially with a design like this, we're looking at, you know, potentially a few different options for design, really a chance to visualize what's happening in the system, right? You folks that have been out there a long time know that, you know, when it rains 5 inches, yeah, it's gonna flood for however long. You folks know that, but the model gives us a chance to look at all the inputs, and as Rachel said, calibrate that existing model. You'll see here a comparison of existing versus proposed in the watershed. And then we can sort of tailor our design options to some of those maybe more problem areas in the watershed or rain events. So I think this is a video. So
Yep.
what this just shows is the existing on the left, proposed on the right. And this is meant to show flooding in the fields and then how they drain. So the left was this example project's existing system, and then the right was with an improvement.
So as you saw, they flooded the same, and they look very similar on the left and the right for the first, few seconds of the video. But then with that upsized tile, you're seeing drainage that's a lot faster. Up in the left-hand corner of the screen is a timestamp. So at this point, we're at 2 days past the rain event. On the right-hand side of the screen, there's almost no water left. The water that is left on the right-hand side of the screen was for tile branches that we weren't improving. And so there wasn't an outlet for that water. And we can skip the rest of this video, but I'll tell you now, it goes past 10 days where there's still that pond in the middle. So then the last thing I'll talk about with modeling too is that we can pull results into more of a tabular form, and we do put out a report with our model saying, this is what we found for proposed versus existing conditions. And so we can look at the outlet and say, here's what's currently coming out of our system. And with our proposed, here's what'll be coming out later. And look at numbers in that fashion too. So there's a visual component, but then there's also a numerical component to it as well. So then with that, we're gonna go back to the overall discussion of improvement options where we're looking at what you guys want to do with your land. And we talked extensively about storage just because it is something that a lot of people haven't really encountered in Iowa, but it works. And so is that something that you guys are interested in? Do you want to look at a tile improvement? Do you want to look at an open ditch improvement? And this is your system, so we really want to tailor it to you.
And I think, there's been a district like this, there's been, not to say that folks in this room were around then, but like in the 80s and 90s, there were projects proposed then, and to some extent, some of them proceeded, some did not. So we certainly don't want to just push this forward, without receiving your input, if it's not something you're going to be supportive of. So that's why, the best time for us to get the input is now, so we can tailor our designs to what you folks are looking for. Maybe it is cheaper to extend an open ditch to a certain extent in the watershed. However, you then have to take land out of production. That ditch will then have to be, cleaned out somewhat regularly. There was a surface channel proposed in the 80s. It was done privately. There was also a surface channel that was constructed in the 90s. So there's been a lot of different things looked at in the district. And that's where it'd be helpful to know, or if there's anything we're missing that you folks know of from your, previous experience in the district, it'd be good to know as well.
Eliminate the tile that's there and just put in twice bigger tile, is that what you're?
So a typical tile.
Can you
improvement,
repeat the question so Steve can hear it?
Yeah, absolutely. The question was about tile improvement and eliminating the existing tile. So we have looked at what we'll call a parallel tile improvement where you're utilizing the existing tile and putting in a new one to utilize capacity from both. What typically, without knowing the condition of the tile, knowing it's 100 years old, it's typically not a very safe bet to count on that additional capacity. So what we typically would do in a tile improvement is size the new tile to handle all of the drainage. And then, you know, if landowners wanted to leave the old tile active essentially, and we'd connect it into the new, we could do that. But the new tile would be sized such that, you know, it handles the capacity. Does that answer your question? Yeah. The other thing might mention too is that, you know, we haven't looked at any of these potential options yet for your district, so we don't have any costs associated with them yet. That is something that would come, you know, at a future meeting where we get an idea of what folks might be interested in. We can start to look at some proposed designs for those associated costs, give you that information to get you a little better idea of what a project might cost. One thing, you know, I will say, looking at the system, a tile improvement is definitely feasible. It is going to be pretty expensive probably with the size of the watershed. I think incorporation of storage or surface channel could really save some money in that direction, where you've got somewhat of a surface channel already started and, you know, privately constructed one. You know, any input from landowners on the surface channel that's been out there. I know that it was constructed quite some time ago. Is there interest in looking at deepening that or improving that to provide more surface drainage, maybe some cost savings, or thoughts landowners have on potential for a surface channel?
Anything the county of enlarging the culverts under the road?
That's a really good point. From what I could tell from the history, the culvert under A22 there was replaced as part of that 1990s surface channel project. Since we haven't done anything proposed yet, we don't have anything, you know, regarding the road culverts. However, if we did do a proposed project design, included in that would be whatever is necessary to convey that water across the road right away at each location. And the way the drainage code in Iowa is set up is that the landowners or the drainage district pays for everything outside of county road right away. Within county road right away, the county secondary roads pays for that. So if there was a new culvert that had to be installed. So we have not yet, but in pursuing any one of these improvement options, we would be taking a look at that and working with Cole and his department to provide some recommendations on potential culvert improvements. And I realize too, you know, we've obviously thrown a whole lot of information at you here pretty quickly, and maybe some of these things take some time to think about too. We do have a couple other points we want to touch on here before we wrap things up. Certainly, in getting some input and feedback today would be the best time. We'd like to hear from you today. But you know, one of the things we'll also talk about in closing here is we want to work with you. We'll be glad to provide contact information with you as well. And if there's thoughts you have, you know, on the drive home today or some other time, we're glad to take those under consideration as well. So I think with that, annex and reclass. Okay. Yeah.
Have you looked into how far up you would be extending the open ditch?
Yeah. The open ditch extension. So, have not yet. However, what my gut tells me is, you're probably looking at going up into the center of section 24, because your change in watershed from where the ditch ends now up to county A22 is not going to be a huge difference. And I know that some of the lowest lying wettest areas are up there in section 24. So I would have to imagine you'd probably looking at least up to County Highway A22 and potentially, you know, up into the center of section 24 as well. But we haven't looked at the length of ditch quite yet.
Right now, the road is restricting some on 822.
Okay. And that's certainly, we'll take a look at the plans from the nineties when that culvert was installed, then we can look at what kind of capacity, you know, there is across the road there. When we look at those plans, we'll-
All right, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and we're gonna just kind of touch on annexation and reclassification really quickly for the district. So as we mentioned in the history of this district, DD 19 was fully reclassified in the mid 1980s. We looked through the existing schedule, and the equitability of it would really be dependent on what kind of improvement we would be looking at. Benefit is going to be different if we do a main open ditch versus if we do a tile. If we incorporate storage, some people are going to benefit from that differently as well. So looking at like a pre-construction reclassification, we would recommend making a decision on that later on in the process where we've kind of honed in what specific improvements we would want to look at.
And just so we didn't jump too far ahead, just for those that don't know, when we're talking about reclassification, if you're not aware, there's an assessment schedule on file for the facilities of the district with the county. That's how the funds are raised for the district. The lands are assessed on a parcel by parcel basis. And part of that is classification of benefits. So how much each parcel pays, and we're not making any decisions on that today, other than just to look at what the existing schedule is on file, and what direction we might go with considering that. So, sorry, go ahead.
So this was a map of the existing assessment schedule. This is on an assessment unit basis. This next one is just assessments per acre. You can see that there's kind of that blue bullseye in section 23. And when you're looking at aerials of the land, I mean, that is by far the wettest. And so it does seem to match the district pretty well. And then when we look at spread too, you know, the landowner that's paying the most on the assessment schedule is paying a little over 2 times what the average landowner is paying for that extra benefit. And typically for numbers with that spread, 3 times as much is what we typically like to see. You know, the highest paying landowner is only paying 3 times the average assessment. And so what's in there lies pretty well within what we would expect for an existing assessment schedule. Looking at annexation as well, there are a couple of parcels within the watershed that we've delineated that are not currently being assessed, and so the board may want to consider annexation in the future. That would be a separate report and a hearing for landowners. So that's not taking place today, nor are we asking the board to make any sort of action regarding annexation today, but just want to put it on everybody's radar. And that annexation would be completed prior to any reclassification of benefits work that we would do with updating that assessment schedule.
Look at the map just to
Yeah.
see. So what Rachel's talking about is there's like, if you look up there kind of on the top right, you can see like there's a couple parcels here and there that are that we found to be within the watershed that are not currently on that assessment schedule. So we take a look at the other schedules of the district, see if they're in the district at all. If not, there is a process of annexation where, you know, we would study those parcels, prepare a report for the board. There'd be a hearing with those landowners on potentially being annexed into, so that everybody who's receiving benefit from the district is paying their share. So none of that's happening today. We just wanted to kind of put it on everyone's mind.
Similarly with reclassification, as I mentioned, the benefit that individuals will receive will depend largely on what kind of improvement happens, whether we incorporate storage, whether it's a main open ditch or a tile. But that reclassification of benefits where we're looking at making sure that everything is equitable and that people are being assessed the right amount would happen after that annexation. And that would also be a separate report and hearing. And like I mentioned earlier, that existing schedule after we do the improvement may be pretty inequitable depending on what goes where. So I'll turn it back over to Spencer and he'll kind of talk through some next steps for the board, for landowners, and then for us as ISG as well.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, you know, we've thrown a lot of information at you today. Still want to have a chance to talk with you and answer any questions you have or receive any input you have. But how things would kind of look, you know, moving forward. As I mentioned in the drainage process, you know, there was a petition filed for improvement for the district. So in order to address that petition, the board does need to have a formal engineer's report prepared and a public hearing. That's not happening today, so that will have to happen in the future to address that petition. So kind of looking at moving the project forward, we want to get any other input from you folks. Things that were often very helpful for us that you may have that can be helpful in our design. Big one is any private tile maps you have. We certainly appreciate those. It's a lot easier for us to plan for your private tile if we know about it now, whereas versus if we do a project and then we find out about it, you know, when we've got a contractor in the field. So any private tile maps, super helpful. If you've had any NRCS wetland determinations completed on your farm and are willing to share those are very helpful for us in considering any permitting that would potentially be necessary in the future too. And then any other information that you have just from your experience from the watershed. And any of that stuff you can certainly either you could provide to Jordan and she can share with us here at the county auditor's office, or we'll provide contact information as well. But those are the kind of big things we'd like to get from landowners. Also, you know, if there's any of the multi-purpose drainage management that might interest you, we want to hear about that as well. We could have a conversation about what that might look like. Again, that doesn't have to happen today, but the sooner we know in the process, the better we can plan for it. So kind of next steps for what we would be looking at would be proceeding with an engineer's report, looking at those, some of those potential improvement options, getting you some more information on what an improvement might look like, and also cost, obviously, and then holding some more, potentially another meeting to just talk through some of that and get some more input before looking at a final hearing on the project. So I guess maybe before we close things out, we can talk, and with what we'd be looking for from the board today, we can open it up to see if there's any other input from landowners or questions or things information we could provide to you this morning.
What's the timeline on the next thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we would be looking at proceeding with this design over the winter. Understanding a lot of you folks are agricultural based. We, you know, would definitely try to avoid that April, May, early June timeframe in the spring to have a meeting. To say we would have another one before planting, that may be a little quick, just might not give us enough time to get through all the preliminary design. So it may be something like right after the kind of spring planting season is what I would be targeting right now anyway.
And at that point, it would be a potential design cost.
Yes, yes, correct. Yep, that we would have some design options and costs at next discussion. Our recommendation to the board would be to not have that be the final decision point. That would be, you know, here's some more information for you. Here's some more, you know, time to discuss and think about it. And then we would, you know, potentially after that proceed towards final decision point. But that's kind of the tentative timeline right now.
Anybody for them to look at, I guess, does anybody here, does the landowner have a direction they want to have them look at as far as do you want to see a tile improvement, or do you want to see an open ditch, or do you want to see the parallel tile? Are you interested in a wetland anywhere in this project? That'll help give them some design moving towards that next meeting so that they will go up to the next meeting and say, well, I don't like the design option you presented.
So the way the final decision would work is, you know, essentially the board makes the final decision on a project, but I'm not going to speak to them, but I'm sure they will want to hear your input on it. With a petition for improvement, the code states that they must at least address that petition with a report in a hearing. So that's when all that input would be received. There is the ability for landowners with the hearing to file if they're not, you know, if they are opposed to any one option or all options, they can file written objection to those options. That would be, so you would receive a notice before the hearing, and then you would file that objection before the hearing, and it would state in the notice. And then there is a provision in the code, if the majority of landowners owning 70% of the land in the watershed did object, the board would essentially then, it wouldn't even be a decision, it would just be the project would stop. That's called a remonstrance. Otherwise, if remonstrance is not met, it would be the board's decision on which option to approve, as trustees of the district, but they're gonna want your input on which direction to move, forward. Yeah.
If there's a wetland involved in the project, it opens the door for potential outside funding, whereas if you pursue the tile by itself, you don't have that option.
Yes, yeah, so, to date and to my knowledge, without incorporating any sort of water quality component, there is not funding available to help fund a drainage district project. The funding comes from the landowners. However, if you do consider some of those water quality potential projects, wetland storage ponds, we have, from previous experience, previous projects, Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship, Water Quality Division is very much interested, in funding those types of things. And that would be, where they would maybe fund a portion of the project, and then landowners would still have to fund a portion as well. So, savings involved with that as well.
Is remonstrance possible on this project or not?
Yes, I would
It
say,
is?
yes, it would be if there was enough, objections, yep.
Is there a great deal of cost to the district in this design phase? Because this gets billed, the research you're doing.
Right, right. Yes, correct. There is, obviously costs associated with the design of the project. It is, when you're looking at like the scope of the construction of the project itself, it's definitely a percentage of that. So, it gives you the opportunity, to know that information before you're making a decision on a much higher dollar amount. The other thing is, we wanted to get to this meeting here today at as little cost to landowners as possible, so we could get the input from landowners, and, tailor our design moving forward. Obviously, the more design options we look at, the more work we're gonna have to do and the more cost there is associated with that. Moving forward, it's, helpful to know kind of the direction we want to go with the project, so we can tailor our design that way. The other thing I'll just add to that too, so landowners are aware, kind of where this would end is a final engineer's report and hearing. That final engineer's report would be filed with the county, and then the hearing would be held. The code allows for those reports to be used for 10 years. So it's not like we just hand you a report, have a hearing, and then, okay, that's that. If you don't do a project, you could utilize that report and the design in that report for up to 10 years. So if you came back, whatever, at some point in the future and wanted to do, you wouldn't have to start all over again. You could go back to that report that was filed, and utilize that.
But the cost of your report could vary a lot. If people, for instance, if you had clear direction from this group, they don't want any of those ponds, or they don't want any, they could save a little money for themselves if they have a strong opinion one way or the other, if they'd let you know,
Yes.
right?
Yep. It definitely varies quite a bit, but I would say if you were to ask folks that have been around, they would say an average timeline, and this is, definitely varies. It could be anywhere in that 20, 30, 40 year timeline of when you have to clean them out again. It can. So, that's the other thing that's nice about, if you do like say a tile improvement is it is more expensive now, but generally, this tile was put in 1914 and generally hasn't had anything major done to it since. If you put in a tile, it's there, it's, minimum 3 to 4 feet underground at least. It's probably not going to have to be touched for quite some time. Whereas a ditch, you do have to look at that. Sure. Okay. Yep. Yep. Okay. So I'm hearing potentially it will take a little bit of both, but what's maybe the most efficient or cost-effective way to do it? Sure. Okay.
There now, with this tile dump station. Does that have the capacity to handle the water regardless of what we decide?
Yeah, so we have actually just this fall completed some survey on that ditch to get a little more information on the existing conditions. So that will definitely be taken into account. just preliminarily looking at it. I don't know that there was, any significant amount of work that would need to be done to it in terms of conditioner capacity, but that would be part of our study would look at.
It was designed originally to handle all these cases.
Right, right. Yes, it should have been. I obviously did not design it, but it should have been. Yep.
I guess what I would say is on the retention pond, that kind of like a plan where you should put it. I mean, we're sitting here saying like, well, yeah, it should work better, but idea of where it potentially could be, I don't
Sure.
know how you reach the city today.
Yeah, that's fair. I appreciate that. Okay. Where are you looking?
Oh, like on section 26.
Oh, sure. Okay. And the other thing too is with those, you know, that's not like a final shape we'd be looking at. So that's just to say like, this is the general area. Really what the GIS was looking at was the low-lying areas there. And I know that there's more area that's over in the northeast quarter of section 26 or even up in 23. That's kind of a low-lying area. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The other thing too, is we, you know, hearing that input, you know, if we were to look a little more closely at what some, you know, maybe most efficient or best locations for storage are, we can, you know, if the board's comfortable with it, we can reach out to those specific landowners and say, hey, we found, you know, we think this might work on your property and this location. Is this something you might be interested in? You know, to get a little better idea there before we go too far down that path. I know we do have another meeting we want to cover before 10:30. I guess I'll leave it at this, couple things. I'll make sure and leave my cards over here. Also, the county, Jordan has my information, or Cole. We would certainly like to hear from you if you have any input after today. So would the board or auditor's office, they'll pass that information on to us. With that, I guess if there aren't any other questions from the board, the two things we would ask today would be direction to proceed with the ICM model for design and preliminary engineer's report with proposed improvement options.
Anyone wish to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Kim has moved. Now, shall we do this in two parts? Model and then preliminary engineering report?
Well, I think you're just doing an engineering report now, aren't you?
And the 2D model. the
Yeah,
2D
yeah,
model
it could
of
be,
design.
that could be one motion.
Okay, is that your intent, Kim?
Yes.
Okay,
I can second that.
okay, thank you, Tim. It's been
What do you
moved and seconded that we direct ISG to complete the ICM model and the preliminary engineering report. Is there further discussion? As there is none, Kim?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Bill is aye.
And I shouldn't say I'm assuming, but once you start working on that preliminary engineering report, is that, I mean, because I see, you have in here the pre-construction of the reclassification or to decide to use the existing schedule, but you also talked about annexation.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a possibility of lands being annexed?
Yeah, I think we did not make any recommendations in our first kind of summary here regarding that. We just wanted to kind of bring it to the attention today, but I think so. We would definitely make recommendations on annex and reclass in that next report for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So nothing today you need, right?
No, no.
Okay.
That's everything I had for DD 19, I guess. Okay. We do have a meeting for DD 44, which may include some of you. It's a much smaller district. We'll go right into that.
See my drainage map? 19 and
The board should have the DD 44 maps and those out ready.
Okay. Yep. Okay, our next item of business is an informational meeting on DD 44. Who's in charge of that?
Same people,
What's that?
same people.
Same people.
Go ahead.
Okay, next we're gonna do Drainage District 44, which hopefully you see a plat there. This is a completely separate drainage district, however, it is located near DD 19. Similar here in that we're just looking at, some preliminary evaluation, potential improvements, to consider. No decision being made today, just getting input on it. Only difference with DD 44 than kind of DD 19. DD 44 is a much smaller district, much less, I'll say, complex, a lot less going on. So some of these things we might go through a little quicker since I'm guessing most of you heard them for 19. But with that, I guess we introduced ourselves earlier. Rachel and I both been working on this project as well. We'll kind of run through things here and get some input before we proceed. So same process here with an improvement. A petition was filed for drainage improvement for DD 44. On DD 44, there were actually two facilities that were petitioned for improvement. And yeah, so the two facilities that were petitioned for improvement on DD 44 that you'll see on your map there are the main tile, which actually outlets over here on the east end of the district. And it outlets into a little kind of creek that flows down to the river. That main tile goes west and then north and then wraps around back south and west again. It ends over in section 19 here. And then also branch 37 plus 50, which is a different tile in the watershed, was also petitioned. So that's the one kind of in the northwest corner of the watershed there. So those are the two facilities that were petitioned that we're taking a look at today. I think with that, similar to DD 19 that we just talked about, but getting with this project being a little simpler and a little more straightforward, we would be recommending to just go straight to a final engineer's report after today's meeting. We would then prepare a final engineer's report, provide notice, have a hearing and all that before proceeding with that. So that's just kind of an approximate schedule moving forward for this as well. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Rachel and let her talk about the existing watershed conditions, capacities, and again, you can kind of follow along on the plat there.
So similar to DD 19, those existing capacities are provided on that plat map. That might be a little bit easier to read when we get to that portion. So DD 44 is within Lakeville Township. This drainage district is draining almost 470 acres. We're seeing the same types of soils as DD 19. So those C/D soils, which means that they do need that artificial subsurface drainage. And then the outlet, as Spencer mentioned, there is a short open ditch to the east of the DD 44 main tile that it outlets to. Spencer went through that map earlier. The map also does have the branch 3750 watershed on it too, with that darker gray line around it. And that watershed serves 109 acres. This district was established in 1918. It consists of that open ditch to the east, the main tile. It has 10 branches on it. With this district, there are pretty minimal records. We have the original engineer's report from 1918 and a plat map, and that was just about it. So that comes into play when we talk about those existing capacities a little bit. It's also important to note that this district only has one assessment schedule, and there's never been any reclassification of benefits. So that schedule has not been touched since the original establishment of the district. To our knowledge, there have been no improvements or repairs done to this district. It was put in 1918 and it's been there ever since, but not much has been done to it. Here's a couple photos. Most of this is underground, so it's not too interesting to look at, but we do have a couple photos of the outlet here in the main open ditch. So that pipe in the top left is that actual DD-44 main tile outlet. To the right of that in the right top is the tile outlet looking upstream. So that rock is surrounding the tile outlet. And then as you go up, that's where the tile is. And then you would be looking from the point of the main open ditch. And then we have a couple different bird eye views of the district taken from our drone. So the one on the bottom left is the intersection of 180th Street and 170th Avenue. So as you look up to the photo, you can see the tile running along to the what would be top left, and then you can see a portion of the main open ditch. And then on the bottom right of the screen is the DD-44 main tile crossing 180th Street.
And just one thing to mention too, on the main open ditch, the tile outlets, if you look at it, it looks like it's just kind of outletting into a creek there that flows down to the river. The records call out, I think, like a 200-foot main open ditch. So essentially, there was probably just a couple hundred feet that was cleaned in the early 1900s to provide an outlet. Preliminarily, there isn't probably much, if any, work needed downstream of the tile outlet to have the elevation outlet, other than maybe just cleaning a little bit there. So. Not a lot to see on the drone footage with this one, so I think we'll pass on that, but that is available as well.
Yeah, if you would like a link to the drone footage, please reach out to Jordan or myself or Spencer, and we would be more than happy to get that to you. It lives on YouTube. So looking at the existing capacities, again, we look at the drainage coefficient. So that's how much water is draining in inches per acre per day. And it's dependent on how much water the tile can hold and how large of an area is draining to that point in the tile. So looking at the existing tile capacity, we're generally a little bit below a ½ inch per acre per day. We're sitting around the 0.3, 0.4. There are a couple spots where we do get up to that ½ inch, but if you're looking at it, those tend to be farther upstream in the district, which means that it's limited or bottlenecked downstream. We're also kind of seeing what here would be a best case scenario. So as discussed previously, these are calculated as if the tile were brand new. The other thing too is based on the limited information that we have about the tile, we did have to make some educated guesses and some engineering assumptions on what the grade of that tile is. We had size, but we aren't quite sure what grade it was laid on, just because that information was not provided in the 1918 engineer's report. So this is definitely a best case scenario on the existing capacities.
And the existing capacities, Jeremy mentioned before that DD-19 had a ½ inch, which is pretty typical. This district is somewhere in that 0.3 to 0.4 of an inch coefficient existing, which I would say is more than what we typically see for an older system like this. However, it is a pretty small watershed, so it was pretty economical, I'm assuming, back in the 1900s to drain at that little higher of a coefficient. So it is still inadequate compared to what kind of the current minimum drainage standards are, but it is a little more than maybe we've typically seen with these old systems.
So with that, there's not really a lot of existing information to go through just because it is so small and the history is pretty limited. So we're going to talk through just some really simple design options, much simpler than what we talked through on DD-19. So when we're looking at tile design, we look at a couple different things when we're looking at design criteria. We always try to get our district tile at least 3 feet deep. That just gives us adequate depth for farm equipment, but then also so that way private tile can be tiled in. We look at connections and intakes. So we look at all of the district branches and the private tile that will need to be tied in. where we're gonna have to replace intakes, where maybe we need to put some new intakes. And then drainage coefficients, as we mentioned earlier, we typically like to go with at least a 1/2 inch drainage coefficient, but sometimes we do like to bump that up to a 3/4 inch, just depending on how much elevation difference you have and how much water can actually drain by surface. And then we also look at that adequate outlet. And as Spencer mentioned, we do have that 200 feet of main open ditch that looks like it's in pretty decent shape and should be able to have the capacity to transition that water from the main open ditch into the stream that's downstream of the main open ditch. So we looked at 2 different design options. We looked at a 1/2 inch drainage coefficient option, and then we also looked at that 3/4 inch drainage coefficient. The surface relief or the amount of elevation difference is kind of borderline on where you would make the distinction between recommending a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch. And so we've included both.
And just before we kind of go through both of those, just to mention, you know, the 1/2 inch is kind of the general minimum recommended. What we found in previous projects is actually, if you're going through this whole process to do a project and you're looking at putting a new tile in, why not take a look at that next higher sizing? Because we found, and you'll see here, is that typically the additional cost for that, you know, increased size is not, you know, is not huge in comparison to how much more benefit you would get, I guess. So we'll touch on that too, but go ahead, Rachel.
So for proposed capacities, and I believe that you can see these on they're not on the district plat, I apologize. So these numbers are a little bit small for some of you, but I'll run through them. So we looked at a 1/2 inch drainage coefficient. And so the proposed capacity is going to be that far right column, but then looking at the proposed side, it's going to be the 3rd column from the left. And so if you look at the existing size to the proposed size, typically this would be upsizing your tile about 1 size, give or take. And then looking at the option 2, which would be bumping up to that 3/4 inch per day per acre coefficient. Again, that far right is just showing that we're getting that 3/4 of an inch. But if you look at the 2nd and 3rd columns, that's the existing size versus the proposed size. And generally speaking, it's upsizing 2 tile sizes. So we're looking at upsizing 1 size versus 2 sizes, generally speaking. So with that comes the cost. And as Spencer was mentioning, sometimes it might be a little bit more appealing to go for the larger drainage coefficient because the difference in cost is not going to be that much. So if we look at a cost breakdown, our preliminary estimate is that this project is going to be somewhere between 700 and 800,000 for the improvement of the main tile and branch 3750. So if you look at that 3/4 of an inch drainage coefficient, that's 50% more than your 1/2 inch. But if you look at the pay breakdown, you're only paying 8% more cost-wise based on our preliminary cost estimates. So for less than 10% more money, you're getting over 50% more drainage for your lands.
And I'll just add to, you know, this is again, as you heard me mention, very early on in the process, we would obviously have an engineer's report with full, you know, cost breakdowns and costs. We did put some conservative numbers and contingencies on these, to, you know, that way we're not giving you a number now that all of a sudden is a lot higher in the future. So that is kind of an all-in cost for both the main tile improvement, and the branch improvement, as well as, you know, the engineering and non-construction cost damages, all those things as well, with some contingency in there. So,
Is that also the reclassification?
yeah, yep, and then reclassification too. So that's just kind of preliminary to give you an idea. The big, you know, it's obviously not a cheap project either way, but the big thing I do want to just point I want to get across is that really the only difference between option 1 and option 2 is the pipe is 1 size bigger on option 2. Otherwise, it's basically the same project, just 1 size bigger pipe. And with that, you're looking at, you know, 8% more for a lot more drainage. So we can, you know, proceed with looking at both options, absolutely. But just want to get that information out there, as, you know, something that we feel is definitely a lot better bang for your buck to look at a little higher drainage coefficient. So.
So then with this, just kind of a reminder that County Secondary Roads is responsible for paying for what is within the road right of way, and then the drainage district pays for things outside of the road right of way. I know that we had a question about that on DD 19. So talking a little bit about annexation and reclassification for this district. So annexation would be just the identification of any benefiting parcels that aren't currently assessed. I think we've identified maybe 2 or 3 different parcels that are within the watershed that aren't on the current assessment schedule. And so that would be that separate report and hearing, and this would be completed prior to reclassification. And then with reclassification on this one, it's incorporating those annexed parcels. But then, as I mentioned earlier in the history portion, this district is still under the original 1918 assessment schedule, and it's only one schedule for the entire district. Chapter 468, section 131 of the Iowa Code basically states that if districts are still under one assessment schedule, even though they have multiple branches, then the board needs to do a reclassification of the district. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Spencer to talk through next steps on this one.
Yeah, just real briefly, I know we went through this one a lot faster. It is quite a bit more straightforward and simple, I guess, on DD 19, just because of the size and scope. But a couple things I want to touch on is, next steps would be proceeding with the final engineer's report, full design options, cost estimates, and breakdowns. One of the things that we've also done, and I believe the Dickinson County Board likes to do as well, is not only would we in our report give the total project cost, we would recommend actually doing what's called a pre-construction reclassification. So we go through and do that determination of benefits as part of the report. So then you, as each individual landowner, could actually look at your parcels that you own in the watershed and say, okay, if this project is approved, this is how much it's going to cost me. So we don't have that obviously today, but that will be one of the next things. That's called the pre-construction reclassification. With a project like this, with an old schedule that's over 100 years old, the code states that we're going to have to reclassify it anyway. So that would be kind of the next steps, is a final engineer's report, pre-construction reclassification. And that's how the project would proceed. Same kind of story with information that's valuable for us for this potential project as well. In terms of, I guess, before I turn it over to the board here, input from landowners, we can absolutely proceed with, both improvement options in the engineer's report. Like I said, they're pretty similar, so that doesn't take much. But there's other input landowners would have on other improvements they'd like to consider, or, any questions or things we might have missed. Again, I know we went through it pretty quickly. This is a fairly straightforward kind of tile improvement, I guess, where we can just replace the existing old 100-year-old system with a newer, larger one.
Were the branches actually in the establishment, like the original establishment of the drainage?
Yes.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, so all those branches are in the drainage district. So, and probably a good point to mention. So what was happening is all the branches in the drainage district were on one assessment schedule. So if there was work being done to a branch, say up here, actually all landowners would be paying for it because it's on one assessment schedule. Whereas what the code says is that we have to create assessment schedules for each facility. So essentially you would have an assessment schedule for each individual branch tile as well. So.
Cause I only have 37-50 recorded.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Question.
Yeah.
When you take such a small district, take that much money, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. That, I understand these are hugely expensive projects. They're not projects that come around very often. I guess what we can do is provide the proposed design and the cost. I encourage you to voice your concern with the board. They are the ones that have to make the decision. The only thing I'll just state on that, just so everyone's aware, the code does allow for drainage waivers. So, if a project was to proceed, and then there was assessments for that project, those would not, you could pay them all at once, but they wouldn't necessarily have to be all due at once. The code does allow for those to be made over, I think, up to 20 years payments.
No less than 10, no more than 20.
Yeah, no less than 10, no more than 20. And obviously there's interest associated with that, but that is a payment waiver you can take through the county, so.
With your past experience, how close have your bids been? Or estimate?
Yeah, so I'd say the biggest thing we actually ran into in 2020, 2021 is we saw prices of everything just go crazy. And we had things that were off, pretty variably. We just bid a project over in Osceola County last month. So we have pretty, recent bid prices. This project is pretty straightforward, with a tile replacement. So I don't right now see a lot of variability, that would affect that. Again, with those preliminary numbers we put out there, we did add contingency to that just for anything that, could potentially change. We try to set those numbers conservatively so that, the number that you, are given and decide on, is gonna be, hopefully more than, or at least very close to what the actual final cost is. So, usually it does come in pretty close, I would say, I guess to answer your question.
Either one of these projects that, consideration of, big vertical, making the, working in bigger tile, you also look at added tile onto that. Base what I'm getting at, I had a better outline. With that, put more tile on one field.
I see. So you're saying additional, pattern tile, yeah. So, so the way the drainage coefficient calculation works is it takes all acres into consideration for drainage in the watershed. So we're already considering every acre in the watershed. Now, what has happened historically, when these systems were built, the branches were all that was there and there wasn't pattern tile or private tile. So often other parts of the watershed would drain slower because there wasn't private tile or for whatever reason. And now as we're seeing, things change, a lot more pattern tile in fields, that's creating a lot more demand for the main, with that much more drainage, which, is one of the reasons I've seen some of these projects come forward is, the main is not an adequate outlet. And obviously in this case it's not. So our calculation for drainage capacity, takes into consideration all acres of the watershed essentially. So.
More pattern tile, obviously, it would take a bigger outlet. But as it maybe in some ways taking some of the pressure off because it's already drained out before the rain hits it.
Yeah, are you saying like a main improvement takes some of the pressure off? Is that what you're?
Well, no.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay.
Prevent it, I guess, because it's already drained out for that big rain.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, the one thing I would say to that, is the drainage is only as good as the outlet too. So, I've run into a number of districts we've worked on where a bunch of landowners pattern tiled their fields and they weren't seeing it drain any faster than it was before. And that's because the restriction was the outlet. Replaced the outlet, and just anecdotally from a couple projects, I know landowners were really happy with that result.
Most of the styles, 100 years old. One thing we gotta remember, we got a big, about 100 years.
Right. That's the other thing, I'd like to mention is these are not cheap projects. I will also tell you, they were not cheap projects in 1914 when they were done, and they were done 100 years ago. It's not something that comes around very often. It's not something that's going to only be for the next 5 or 10 years. It's going to be for 50 to 100. Right. Yep. I know the board has things at 10:30. I guess on this, we certainly want to receive any other input or questions. Also, Rachel and I can wait out in the hallway too, and talk more if you'd like. The only things I'd be looking for from the board today, I guess, first of all, does the board have any questions or thoughts on the pre-construction reclassification? I think that's generally what, so that would be our recommendation as the board directs us to proceed with the final engineer's report and pre-construction reclassification.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Tim.
I can second it.
Thank you, Tim. It's been moved and seconded to have ISG complete a final engineer's report as well as a pre-construction reclassification. Further discussion? Hearing none. Kim?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Bill is aye.
Okay.
Good to go.
Yep. Thank you everyone for your time today. Rachel and I will wait out in the hallway. If you want to talk or have any other questions, we're glad to answer them. We'll also have cards for you as well if you'd like.
Okay, it is,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
It is now 10:30, and I believe we will vote to go into closed session. So if you find folks would leave, and make sure you have a Feliz Navidad, y'all.
Several people here. Discussion. You wanna do that first? No? No. Wanna go to closed session?
Will you make?
They've been looking.
I would rely on my lawyer.
He said no.
Better.
We'll go ahead and get the closed session over with.
Okay,
Maybe better announce it to people that 50's gonna come back, right? No, some might
let
leave.
him run away. I don't know.
Otherwise, I can call Steve, that's no problem.
No, after the closed session, we will, deal with DD 50.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah,
are you on your laptop?
I'm on my iPad, yes.
I'm gonna call you on your cell phone.
Okay,
So that way, I'm gonna mute this, so that way
Okay.
we, don't have to end the meeting.
okay.
And Brad, you can also stay on. Just stay on, you just won't hear anything.
I'm here.
Okay.
Steve, can you just black out your video for now too?
Yep, I'm gonna hang out.
Can I request you reconvene like?
Safe travels, Bob. Happy Merry Christmas. You bet.
You gonna go, Cole?
Go ahead,
Go ahead, you just.
I gotta pee quick too.
Let's
I got it.
Do we have to vote?
We gotta
already?
vote on
Yeah.
this. Let's do the vote first.
Okay.
forward.
Okay, after our closed session, does anyone have a motion to make?
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, guess we're not going.
Yes.
Come on, guys.
Because, well, yeah, well. No.
Well,
I would make the motion as was presented to Jordan in closed session.
Okay, it's been moved by Steve.
You want me to read it?
yeah.
Sure.
To approve Bob Goodwin and Steve Goodlow to sign the stipulated order and present it to the city of Spirit Lake.
Put the case number on there too, Jordan. You got it?
Sign the stipulated order case, and that's that one ending in 482.
Yes.
Case EQCV 031482.
And I'll second it.
And Jeff has seconded. Further discussion? How could there be?
I think we should, yeah.
Okay, hearing none. Steve,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Kim,
All right,
and Bill is aye.
Bill,
can I take it too?
can we go to number 13?
Mass exodus.
Yes, we
from the
can.
base.
Okay.
Bill,
Why don't you
sorry
wait?
to-
Apparently, we're taking a 5-minute break.
Is it okay if we go ahead and go to item 13? Because I think
That's what Jordan asked, and
That's what
yes,
most
it
of the-
is.
audience, I
that-
think, is here for. So,
So, yeah, we will.
okay.
Must have a flatter of steel compared to everybody else.
I was just thinking, I'm probably the oldest one here.
Drink more water, Bill.
Well, I was gonna say, I knew we shouldn't have had that keg of beer during closed session, but
There's another reason, Barb, not to record that. There you go.
Thanks for waiting.
You feeling better? Good. Good. Hoping you're okay last week.
Yes, yes.
You've been waiting a long time.
Hey, Jim, I'm the oldest one here.
But you have a bag.
Who told you?
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Staying out of this one.
You know, I did have one of those after some surgery, and it was really handy. You'd be watching TV and it's, oh, I should go. No, I don't have to go to the bathroom. I can just fill a bag.
Exactly.
That's what I said while you're out of the room. Did say that. That's why. That's another thing.
It was handy. It really was. But, Jeff go out for lunch. He was talking
coming.
about being.
Said he was gonna
hungry.
order.
Yes, you do.
Somebody would have brought salsa.
Yeah, where's the dip at now?
Well, that was my predecessor always.
Oh, you brought these?
No, my predecessor.
Well, you brought the dip.
He would always bring it.
Okay, now that we've reassembled, I'd like to thank you all for your patience. We're going to jump ahead. To item number 13 concerning potential dissolution of DD 50. Colin, are you leading the discussion or?
Bill, before Colin gets started, I'm gonna have to leave in about 10 minutes.
Okay, we will.
Or I'll miss an appointment if I don't.
Okay. Now, it's not with a grandson or anything.
No, unfortunately, it's not. So,
I'll send you the minutes right away if there's anything you need to know. You can call
okay,
me.
thank you.
Yep.
And Merry Christmas before you leave in 10 minutes, Steve.
Yeah, you also, all of you.
Don't forget, we're meeting on the 27th next week.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll just kind of kick the conversation off, and I apologize last week. I wasn't feeling well, so I couldn't attend, but I did watch the discussion that took place, and it was a good discussion, a good pre-discussion and maybe hopefully it ended up being a good thing, gave people a little bit of time to think things through for a week and come back around and continue that discussion. So this is a discussion about potentially dissolving drainage district number 50 in Dickinson County. So that would essentially mean that drainage district 50 would no longer exist. I don't know how much of the background, just real quick. It's a tile system over 100 years old. It's in the area of Milford. A lot of that area that whole area when the tile was put in was agricultural. A lot of that now has been developed. That system, 30 years ago, there was a large storm sewer project that essentially the main part of that system was replaced with an open ditch and a very, very large storm sewer. So just to kind of give you a comparison, the largest that tile, the district tile ever got was 18 inches. And there's now a 78-inch storm sewer. And so there's different things that have happened. There was a petition for drainage improvements on a branch. And that was a lengthy kind of ugly project that ended up getting terminated. No improvements were done there. And then kind of more recently, a request for repair was made for that same branch. We and essentially said, well, it's a 6-inch tile. It's not going to solve the drainage issues there to repair it, because we'd have to put back the same thing if it's even broken in the first place. So essentially, the conclusion there was that it's not really feasible to do that. So we left it at that. And then been kind of in discussions with Steve Anderson of the sanitary district about lands that maybe should or shouldn't be in the drainage district. I know that was talked about a little bit last week. And potentially trying to address getting those taken out and look at really who should be in the district. That would take reclassification. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but it seems like every time some of these issues come up, we keep coming back to the fact that there is a large storm sewer system that essentially, it was put in 30 years ago, it essentially replaced the district infrastructure. Now, I'm not going to say that every line got replaced and everything, but significantly improved. And as development has occurred since that time, I mean, that tile, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, that was designed to handle future development in the area. Maybe, okay. Okay, well, that'd what I would be anticipate is that 78-inch tile was designed with the development of the area in mind. And since that time, there's been more development. And really everything that I know of has been tied into that storm sewer system. So most of the time, just the drainage district infrastructure has been ignored. It's been built over. And so we kind of come to a point where, do we even need to have a drainage district here? A danger with having a drainage district is you can keep getting petitions where you're forced into taking another look at it, having another report, having another hearing. And if we anticipate that the answer more likely than not is going to be, well, there's this storm sewer that was put in 30 years ago that was meant to essentially replace this and improve it. Why are we messing with this 100-year-old system? But if dissolving the district isn't something that the board can just decide, Iowa law is clear that there's a process that has to be followed in order to dissolve a district. And I don't really know, it's not something that happens very often. It's kind of a unique circumstance. Most of the time you still need drainage. And so you don't get rid of a drainage district, but here it was sort of replaced. But in any case, what would need to happen is the landowners in the district would need to petition to dissolve the district. And essentially you would need over half the people, the landowners in the district, who own at least 60% of the lands in the district, to essentially sign that they want the district dissolved. So we can't really decide anything here today. We can just talk about it in a public forum, the pros and cons, and maybe answer some questions, and we can talk about what that might look like, next steps. But really it's going to come down to, do the landowners want to dissolve it, because they're the ones in complete control here. So I guess that's kind of an introduction to this. Is there any questions or input at this point?
I think I'm more interested in hearing what all
Yeah.
these people have to say than anything else.
Well, I will leave the podium and let anybody else who has anything to say about it, feel free, encouraged to do so.
You didn't wait an hour and a half to not talk.
I think on behalf of the city of Milford, just reiterate what was said last week. It's been round and round for a couple years that there's a consensus that the cost to the project that was put on the table per se, was outweighed by the benefit that was perceived. I think there's been enough work done, through the reports and whatnot to realize that there are some areas that should be looked at for reclassification. So should this drainage district remain, I couldn't disagree with the comments that were made last week and today already that it's likely looking towards a reclassification, regardless of what happens if it's not dissolved. Certainly there's been rural infrastructure constructed over the past many years in the original area of some of DD 50 or most of it. Branch 33, I believe, kind of continues further north into what's still ag, but the district as a whole, as Colin mentioned, certainly has been improved upon since the district was, made 100+ years ago. Don't know that we're here to speak on behalf of the city council as a whole, but I think the same comments remain that we know the process of what would be involved to dissolve a district and whether that were to take place.
So
if there are any questions that maybe would pinpoint the city per se, you can certainly address those.
Would that be a yes, I think we should resolve, or no, I don't think we should?
Well,
Your
I
opinion.
don't know that the council has even considered one way or the other, so I don't know that anyone is in the position to speak for the council as a whole. But I just wanted to reiterate the same comments that we made last week of, now that we know what has happened over the past 2 to 3 years, we know what would be in front of them if it were to remain, and just continued work that would need to happen without any actual construction, as far as reports and reclassifications and things like that. Okay. So I don't think at this point the city has a firm or voted upon stance of one way or the other.
Good.
How would that work, Steve? We'd reclassify, I assume, to know what is drainage district 50 or whatever it is. And then go from there.
That's if we don't dissolve? If we dissolve or don't dissolve?
Well, either way,
Well, if we dissolve, it doesn't exist.
because who's gonna know
We dissolve.
what
it
you're
doesn't
taking
exist.
care of?
If we dissolve, it doesn't exist. It's gone.
Then the people that
landowner
have
dissolve, I
land
should say.
within,
Well, we're not leaving, I mean, then they fall back to regular drainage law as stated by the Iowa code.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's a whole,
it's just that they're doing their drainage law outside of the drainage district framework.
Yeah.
Drainage law is still there.
yeah.
Subordinate takes from dominant, I mean, they'll have to work that out. But they'll have the luxury of working it out without having to have certified and professional engineers sign everything they do. They can do some moderate or some substandard repair if they want to, which would probably add some relief to them. But either way, I just don't see a way for the drainage district to be a player.
who repairs for damages, or if they re-up it?
If
It
you're
would-
blocking my drainage, then I talk. If you can't, you and I can't talk, my lawyer will talk to you, and that's the way that would work then,
Okay,
I think.
Yes, I mean, I got all these engineers here, but I mean, there's individual drainage rights right in 468 in the 600s.
Yeah, and I think that those provisions would say whatever's there stays there. So that you're not hindering or blocking drainage, it just wouldn't be improved upon as a district. If it's dissolved.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work either. We've had discussions about how that goes when you abandon the drainage infrastructure. If it's working, that's one thing, but if it's not working now when it's abandoned, is it considered drainage or is it just a broken tile? I don't know. There'd have to be some definitions there.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the gray area that, I mean, one thing that was answered last week was, it's still thought that branches can't be, you know, it's a district as a whole, not certain branches.
But I guess I was thinking back to, we're obviously not gonna go dig up the tiles that are there when we abandon. So every property owner will have a chunk of a tile going through some of those places. And I guess I haven't had a real clear definition how that would work going forward if it's abandoned, because if it's flowing when they take possession of it, it's a waterway, isn't it? Isn't that considered a?
Yeah, I don't have the legal aspect, but I don't, certainly it would have to either be repaired somehow, or there you're back into the reclassification of a new district, new drainage district.
Yeah, I don't know.
If it's dissolved.
But it could just be the owners.
Right, no, that's
Right,
what I mean. It's either a private repair or.
Well, it will be the owners, but an upstream owner could possibly force a downstream owner to fix his tile. If it remains. How did that go?
Jim said, in his opinion, that my recollection of that conversation with Jim Hudson was that in a theoretical scenario where there's no drainage district and there's a downstream landowner that a tile breaks, they wouldn't have, how I understood it, they wouldn't have an obligation to repair that.
Oh.
So where there would be an obligation if it's in a drainage district. So, and kind of circling back, a couple points were made about reclassification. There's an existing schedule, not saying it's perfect, but that technically is that schedule for Drainage District 50, that is Drainage District 50 currently, what's of record with the auditor's office. So we could use that as the basis of, if somebody's in there, they can petition for dissolving the district and that would count without having to reclassify anything. If the district is not dissolved and we're talking about potential reclassification, not to bore everybody with the details, but there's some really complex stuff, and it's all kind of related to how there's overlapping systems here, where there was a drainage district put in 100 years ago, and then all these other storm sewers and things were put in and crossed them and maybe ripped them out for a while and put in a ditch, and we'd have to figure out what's happening. And that would be an expensive process just to do that before we could understand enough to know what's going on in order to reclassify it. That's part of the reason we're having this discussion now too, is if there's a chance we're going to reclassify it, I mean, that's going to cost a significant amount of money. And if the district infrastructure has been replaced and improved and essentially making this old system a moot point, is it worthwhile to spend that kind of money again in this district and expect the landowners to pick up that bill? Like, what are we gaining by continuing to do these things?
I think we've really talked a long time about all this stuff. I guess I'd be curious, is there anybody here that wants to keep that drainage district? Because we could direct this conversation to a much finer point quickly if we just start eliminating. So if everybody is kind of more or less in favor of getting rid of it, shouldn't we just be talking about what we have to do to get rid of it, like pay off the debt?
Yeah.
And What else?
Well, the petitions, and we could, I mean, if the board's in support of it, which in my opinion, you should be. A letter, there's different ways we can do it. I mean, we could send a letter out and have an informational meeting, like actual notice to them, and not just on a board agenda item. Like you could send notice out to people, or you could send a letter and explain the situation and include a form that they can just fill in their name and say, I'm a landowner in Drainage District 50 and I want it dissolved. Sign it, bring it to the auditor's office. Something like that's gonna have to happen unless the landowners organize somehow a formal petition that everybody you have one block of text and then you have all these lines and everybody signs. I mean, those are things that we can't really control exactly, but we could help promote it.
Personally, I think it'd be more effective if the landowners got very involved with that campaign. Do you have the map on this up to DD 50 or I mean, I've got it too if you don't, but I mean, this is a pretty big district and it's going to take a lot of work. I mean, I think that this board, I think we should send out notices and do what we can, but there's no way the apathy around the drainage district for a lot of these people that are affected, they're just not going to go vote on this thing. You're going to have to go tell them, your friends and neighbors, you're going to say, please vote to dissolve that. And I don't know can you honestly say anybody's really getting that much benefit out of DD 50? You probably know as well as anybody, Steve. Is anybody really benefiting from this?
Yeah.
But you can see where us doing our thing, I don't know if we'll get anybody off the couch. And it's pretty important to a lot of you people that this thing go away, I think. We've got all that.
Because I think if I got something like that in the mail and you haven't really been in the know about what's going on, maybe someone to try to explain it a little further, encourage them.
Is anything gonna come about with DD 91 being so close to it?
I don't know why it would.
They're completely separate.
I know they're separate, but I'm just saying, developing that district is.
I wouldn't anticipate really. They're going completely different direction. They're completely separate. I suppose that the landowners in that district saw that this one developed, they have to do that, but it'd still have to be a matter of the fact that there's lack of drainage. I would hesitate.
Now we actually have drainage infrastructure, stormwater pond, that's part of that. That is functional. It's taking responsibility. On the petition though, should there be what the person's assessed value is and what the legal description of the property is, so then otherwise it's gonna be a calculated nightmare to figure out. We have 50% of the people, we have to.
Our system shows that.
So you
We
get,
allow-
So something you're supposed to track. So like if you get one landowner that owns 10 parcels in that section, Colin will say, okay, I got a petition from this landowner. He's representing all the parcels. If you're not representing all the parcels, then for whatever reason, if your landowner says, yeah, I want to sign all 50% of the parcels in the watershed. I suppose then leave the description, but if you want to say all my parcels, just say you're the landowner in that watershed and you're on the assessment schedule and we can track.
What about with et al? Do you have to have everybody's signature? Or do you just have to have one?
Like on a trust.
Yeah, we'll put et al because there's so many names on it. So there's one with interest.
That's where
there's the legal aspect to this, of who legally gets signed it and what are they signing for? I guess that's what
Well,
it's the same process that we would use for remonstrance.
just the reverse.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could save everybody a lot of time if you just figured out the big people. City of Milford would be a large one. And so you take the big people and then you go to, like on my map, what I've got pulled up is I've got up here on 22nd Street. There's a guy who built a pretty nice building right over the top of this tile, probably. I mean, I get that these aren't exact, but chances are there's a guy that built a pretty nice building right over the top of that tile again. That person should be very motivated to get rid of this damn drainage district before he has somebody come and tear his building down. Because as long as I'm on this board, I'm not doing this shit anymore. We have a problem, it's gonna go through your building or you're gonna find another way around it. We're not gonna put people through this. People just pay too much.
Tim, and just to add on to that, the people that have the real large assessments. People that you probably want to target, very good assessment, work that was done. Because
Well,
they're
in-
well in tune to what's going on.
But that's the branch. Yeah, I assume that this branch is gonna have nearly 100% sign up. But that's not enough. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, it's not enough. We gotta get out here to that's why I keep talking about the apathy around the voting on these things. They just aren't gonna care. So somebody's gotta go out and motivate these people. And if it's to show them a map and a picture of a bulldozer together, that'll help motivate them. But so everybody here is for dissolving this drainage district, right? I think it's the right move. Stop the pain. Well, I'm not sure why you would have a time limit. As soon as you've made 50%, but then you still can't finish it until the debts are paid. What else? Is there anything else?
That's what you-
What is the debt we talk about debt? What money are we talking?
So the money that I just levied, that we had talked about, like with your big assessment. Yes, yep. So I set those up as half payments. So we'll have I would assuming the rest of the debt will be paid in the March property tax time.
But the code would say all of it has to be paid,
Right,
right?
but I levied for the whole amount. So unless there's any excess after that from interest from anything, then that would be on top. So
Did
then
anybody ask for a waiver on it? Did
just
anybody-
one.
Oh, okay.
And as I understand it too, we could go through the rest of the steps and effectively it would be dissolved, but it can't officially be done until the balance hits zero. And then it's
Okay.
done. So I don't
that's
think
what we
that
gotta do.
stops us from proceeding with anything else.
So if I would have to levy again, I would just not do half payments and we would have it fully at zero after the September property taxes, as long as there's, depending on what March brings.
That's the goal.
So strategy, what's the strategy gonna be then? Do we send out a notice of a public hearing? Do we try to get people to sign up? What's the?
I think it talks about the petition has to be filed first, doesn't it, Tom?
Well, you can always have an informational meeting. We could send letters out and say we want to, up to this point, we've just put it on the agenda to talk about. So if there's a lot of people probably in the district who aren't aware that we're talking about it today. And so we could have a little bit more of an effort to get them involved and get them here. We could do that. We could send letters and just.
I think a lot of people are getting tired of coming to meetings on it. They've got other things to do and
Yeah.
They'd probably sign something if we could just get it out. We
But
should have
look-
the minimum hearing or whatever we need to do. and
It
get
looks to
going.
me like we have a motivated group here who's willing to step up and help. And if
Exactly.
they can work with Jordan, I would say get that rolling. And if we need to send out a letter in addition to that, notifying them, we're hitting all ends of it. But I think the real traction is gonna be with where you get started and then can follow up with letters. And then if we have to have a meeting, great. But I think that petition and getting folks to sign it's the key.
And I can,
Yeah,
I just did this sample one that I sent out in another county. You have to change the language. Bring the county, but I mean, that's something simple that anybody can just say, and then basically sign your name. I'm in this district and I want it dissolved, signature, bring it to the auditor's office.
And
Right. We'll add up the land, like there has to, and at the end, if it's gonna be dissolved, it has to be at least 60% of the lands in the district. But, I mean, you still have to get to 50% of the landowners. So, I mean, it is important to get some of the bigger landowners so you can get to that 60%, but you still have to be at least half the landowners
Can't-
have to sign.
Can't you just give her one of the reclassification sheets that tells how much?
Then
people
she'd
have?
know who's in
well,
there.
I can just run a list. Cheryl, what I'll do is I can actually print out the labels for. Yep, but I can make it easier for you and just have it'll look a little bit easier than that. I mean, not a lot, but I can also print off labels for every landowner.
Will it show how much they own, so they know what targets to go
Yeah.
after? Okay.
Yep, I'll do both.
And they can check it off, if
Mhm.
they know they've got enough,
Mhm.
we're ready to move to the next stage.
Yep.
So we're gonna start off by, we're not gonna send a letter or have a meeting. We're gonna start off and see where we get with this. Is that?
I'm looking at it just like if someone filed for a petition to improve it. That's what they don't come to us and have a meet, they show up with a petition. Am I wrong on that?
It can't hurt to send out a letter.
Oh, absolutely.
And have that going on at the same time.
Like, oh yeah, I saw that in the mail.
Exactly.
Yeah, that,
That'll open doors for sure.
Well, give her, yeah, let her know how we feel.
I could pretty easily.
Show them
Should
your,
I
even-
show them your tax levy.
This
huh?
handout.
And say, this will now go into your account instead of the county.
I think I would coordinate with Cheryl on that. and see
But I'm
what
just
she-
saying, as for us as drainage district trustees, if you guys also want to dissolve it, call and present a letter, create one. I can mail it with the petition, with the
Yeah.
mail labels and everything. I have all.
Right.
Yeah, I think after this, after they get it rolling, I mean, it only can't take that many signatures to start it.
Well, then I'll just.
I'd like to see it.
You got about 60%.
And then they can say how mad they are at us for causing that big bill and we'll get more people to sign it, but, you know.
The other question from that petition, like, if it is dissolved as a landowner, does it change our relationship with the county?
It'll make it better because you won't be. Yeah, yeah. No, you can't start your own county. You'll be, the only difference is we'll have a better relationship because we won't send you that levy for the taxes.
It only affects your, only affects the ability to be assessed by the drain.
Okay.
And then just, I think I heard something downside. Just for like say the upside. But can somebody just summarize if there were a downside? We really don't know what the downside would be. The upside is that hopefully this will never happen again. What has happened, but does anyone see a crystal ball what the downside might be as a landowner?
Well, we've talked about that quite a bit, the downside, and it's pretty small. I think it's pretty small, but there is the idea that you would no longer have the drainage district to file a petition with. If you wanted something resolved, you'd have to do that on your own between your neighbor or the neighbor in the court. But boy, I think that's a pretty small risk, in my opinion. Isn't that kind of what we decided last time we talked about this?
Yeah. So
With the exception of old water.
Well, but he won't have the ability to file a petition anymore because we're gonna dissolve the drainage district. But if you had the drainage district, you're right, he wouldn't have to talk to his neighbor.
I guess as far as the drainage district's power goes to regulate drainage within the drainage district, they're only, I guess, associated with the drainage district facility. You know, if for whatever reason, I regrade my yard to shed onto my neighbor's property, that's still a private drainage issue.
Correct.
Regardless of if you're in a drainage district or not.
Correct.
So
Correct.
you're only changing your ability to petition the drainage district to go and do something with a district facility, which all these district facilities have, in essence, been eclipsed by more or larger drain tile that was installed by the city of Milford.
Yeah.
So there's very little downside, in my opinion, so.
I think you're right.
Roads, what in the county, how they have to take out culvert goes
No.
through the road?
No. No, we can't take that culvert out. You're talking about the 24-inch or 30-inch culvert that's on the north side of this? Yeah. We can't do that. That's still gonna remain in place.
The culvert, is that actually even considered drainage district
That's
property?
not
It's not
considered part of
even,
the
it's totally, that'd be just back to drainage law and then you couldn't stop that.
Why that culvert's there, because when the road got built, we still need to allow natural drainage to occur, so we get that road can't create a dam, but everything on the upstream landowner to be able, the upstream landowner used to be able to drain through there before the culvert allows that drainage to continue.
If there's a dispute, isn't that why you have trustees? Over town, just like fence, neighbors get together and have, if they can't agree, turn it over to the trustees.
I guess, have you ever seen a trustee be brought in on a private drainage issue? I'm sure they certainly could be consulted if you wanted to get a separate opinion, but typically, those things, a lot of times you see them end up in court or they're settled, before they make it to court.
There are some things in the individual drainage law that could actually end up being brought before the board of supervisors. Sort of figure some of those things out, but that's pretty rare to see that. I don't know if that's ever.
But those issues, those types of issues, if they were brought up, they would probably only affect the two people involved. They probably wouldn't be assessing everybody all the way down the road that had no part in that. If I'm thinking the same issues you would be thinking of, I'm thinking of somebody changing some flow or whatever.
Yeah. Somebody who wants to tile across somebody else's land to get to this other outlet.
Mhm. Yeah. We got a plan? Great, thank you.
Oh. Okay, back to item 10.
Say something really rare.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks for waiting so long too.
Yes.
Okay, we need discussion and action on the fiscal year 25 elected officials' wage increases as recommended by the compensation board. Now, the compensation board recommended what?
For elected
Jim?
officials, 6.6%, and for the sheriff, 9.9%. Inflation rate as of November 30th was 3.14%. Social Security increase was 3.2%. I went online and checked with the National HR SHRM organization, who deals with a lot of employers. And they said that the average increase for 2024 will be 4.1%. So those are just some different figures. That's all.
Right.
I'm just throwing those out there for you. So that's the information that we have. So 6.6 for elected, 9.9 for sheriff.
Well, I don't think that's gonna happen.
No, I agree. I agree. The thing we do have to remember is if we reduce that amount, which I'm assuming we will do that today, whatever we do for the elected official has to be the same percentage for the sheriff. I'll throw a couple numbers out. Is that a good way to start?
I think you should.
And if people
Yeah.
don't like it, we can go at it. I guess the figures that I'm looking at for our employees, and again, I'm open for much discussion, but I think we got to get it started somewhere. I'm more in that 4.25% to 4.5% raise. In doing that, if we did, that would give the sheriff a 6.38% increase at 4.25. At 4.5 would be 6.75. Back to blue is part of that difference, which we talk about with the sheriff. I think the thing we're wanting to do, and I think I can speak for all of us, at least in the time I've been here, is we want to keep our employees in line across the state, with the size of our county and where we are with that. And all of us know we have some really great employees here and we want to keep them involved. So I guess that's a starting point. I'll throw out 4.25 to 4.5. I don't know what y'all are thinking. Again, I'm open to whatever, but I want us to start somewhere.
That's exactly what I was thinking. You're right on.
Now, you're talking about elected officials, right?
All right, right now we are talking elected officials.
I like to treat them both the same.
So do I.
Well, I just.
Is what I'd like to do.
just wanted
But we
to-
have to do, you're exactly right.
Yes,
You're right now,
we-
technically you are exactly
We
right.
we do them separately,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but
I understand, but I just wanted to
Mhm.
make sure.
yep, elected officials and sheriff. What's everybody else think?
Well, I was thinking 3.5. But then, inflation's 3.1, so that keeps them ahead of that. However, last year our raise didn't keep up with inflation.
Nope.
So I could be urged to go a little higher.
Yeah, I'm in line with Kim and Tim have said as well. Started out lower, you always do,
Mhm.
and.
Well, and I think we can swing it, and if you don't give somebody more than the cost of living, you're basically telling them there's a door right there and you should use it, really.
We were talking yesterday, retention is
We gotta
probably a
retain.
tougher thing than it used to be. We've got great employees. really.
Oh, no doubt.
No question, in my mind.
And I think it's doable. Well, Lori's here. I think it's doable. I think it's perfectly doable. That we're talking 4.25 and 6.38, right? That's what you're talking?
And that was what reduction then, 35%?
Roughly.
Yeah.
Well, because it has to be the same percentage.
Correct,
You just have
correct.
to say.
How I did it, Lori, is to get to 4.25 for an elected official, off of 6.6 is 0.644, 64% of it. And then I took the sheriff's 9.9 at that 64%, and it comes out to 6.38. At four,
Basically 36% reduction.
roughly 35 something.
Well, I think that's probably totally doable. Especially with the absolutely no increase into the insurance this year. And we're gonna be tapped going forward, obviously, with the 5-year constraints of the limitations we have on our levy, so.
That's a point I wanted to bring up too, is I'm thinking that we should go ahead and set these levels. And then as we go through this budgeting process this year, we may find ourselves in some different footing and just have to change it.
We might have to.
Correct.
But people have to have a number to start with.
Right.
Yes.
And by the time you punch all those numbers in that new tax code thing, the Hart's File 718, or you get two different answers every time you try to explain it or get a question.
It's gonna be a challenge.
But the final say is gonna be that software they send you, right? I mean, we can go to all the seminars we want, but when you
Yep.
try to populate those numbers, it's gonna. So that's why I wanna make sure that everybody understands when we send these out to the department heads that
It could change.
this is what we think we're doing. Cool.
Let's remember that no increase in insurance is due to those same employees that participated.
Yeah.
That
Make
wellness
that
program, that wellness program saved us nearly $80,000 in that premium part of it. So it's a huge deal for us as a county and for us as employees, so. You want a motion?
I would appreciate that.
And Lori, check my math, but
I just did it on simple percentages and 35% of,
I'll check.
35% of 6.6 would be 429, and 35% off of 9.9 would be 6.43.
and that's what,
That's
and what's that percentage reduction?
35.
A 35% reduction, okay? I'll make a motion that for elected officials, it would be 4.29% increase. And for the sheriff, 6.43% increase.
So you're gonna
That's
do
a
the
35%
yeah.
reduction.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Kim, seconded by Tim, that our elected officials receive a 4.29% increase and the sheriff receives a 6.43.
Correct.
Do I hear further discussion? Hearing none. Kim?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And Bill is aye.
A curiosity question. What in the budgeting process would you anticipate that might change that number?
With this house file, it
Mhm.
all goes on a percentage, because if you hit in a certain part of growth, you have to reduce now what it is to set your levy.
Sure.
And it could set the levy differently, that we wouldn't have enough money to do the things that we need to do as a county. Could change some of that.
So do you anticipate that might happen?
Well, I believe we have
You don't.
tremendous
I don't,
growth, but
you
no,
need
not
to
that.
be
Just what,
prepared.
We gotta be
just what we're
smart.
doing
for
and
it.
what, no, I'm with you. I'm just, like I said, it's a curiosity question. What
Mhm.
did you?
And I mean, just, it gets down to priorities, and that's exactly what the legislator intended us to do. And for me, it's a higher priority for me to fully pay our employees than it is to fully fund the discretionary income or discretionary spending.
Because when Judge Peterson was here the other day, when he was talking about that the judicial branch is not being fully funded like last year, I have no idea what they're gonna do this year, but they lost a lot of people statewide in the judicial branch because there was no wage increase.
Every state agency has.
Right.
Call, revenue department, see how long you're on hold.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, it's bad.
The engineers conference in Des Moines and the DOT said the same thing. I mean, there's been constant change.
Yeah.
Change this person, change this person, change this.
so that's why
That's not
I
working.
want to fully fund our staff first. That's our first
We have to.
appreciation.
We have to. I'm just curious.
All right, moving on. Discussion on the wage increases for the non-elected.
I think it should be the same. I would move it, go 4.29.
I'll second that.
But we do provide such a nice place to work, they'd probably pay us to work here, wouldn't
Well,
they?
if you gave them chips.
I wouldn't bet.
Jordan would, I can see the look on her face.
That's a no. In case you're wondering.
Anyway, that was moving.
Okay,
And
yeah,
I seconded.
okay, Tim has moved, Jeff is second, to raise the non-elected people the same as the elected at 4.29%. Further discussion? If not, Tim,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Kim,
Aye.
and Bill is aye. Okay. Thank you for waiting around, Cole.
Yeah, it was the most exciting part of the meeting and everybody's gone now, so.
Dear Santa,
Yeah,
all I want.
Barb's here still, so she gets excited by the drainage district repairs.
Well-
They're the most exciting part of the meeting, so.
Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas is not to hear about another drainage district.
You're in the wrong
Yes.
profession.
Never again.
I get a few of them today, don't I?
Today's not the day.
He's me?
No, you have. One of them's.
Wow, Vinny.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can, Steve. Sure. Okay.
Do I have to sign his name?
No, I think you probably want to send your own.
I can do it by me.
Oh, thank you.
Like one drainage district's coming back up again. Second time.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we talked about drainage district.
It has.
I'm sure we, I guess we'll get to that. The first one we have, today is consideration for repairs on drainage district number 6. These were beaver dams, or are beaver dams. I reviewed this and I talked with, Ben Ehlers. This is one that the county, can take care of, and we should be able to do it for less than $1,000. It's a relatively shallow ditch and it's not especially wide, so we can get it with our smaller excavator.
Motion to approve.
Consider approve, or did you say motion approved? Or
I
what?
did.
Oh, okay. I thought you said.
Okay.
Second.
That was approved.
Okay, Kim has
Sorry.
moved, Kim has seconded, for the repairs on drainage district number 6. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. Kim?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And Bill is aye.
Okay, the next one is drainage district 19. So I'm sure if we watched that drone video, we'd probably see this, but this one is also beaver dam repairs. The difference is that it's a deep ditch and it's more than what we can reach with our equipment. So I guess for the consider request for repairs on drainage district 19, I would suggest directing me to solicit a contractor to perform those repairs. I would guess that it's gonna fall somewhere in that $2,000 range.
Motion to approve.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
Second it.
Thank you, Kim. Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. Kim?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And Bill is aye.
And the last one is consider request for repairs on drainage district number 5. This one is not a beaver dam. This is a tile outlet that's failed. It's caused a blowout in the creek bank. So I guess my suggested repair on this would be to extend that tile back out to the edge of the ditch where it's supposed to be. Do some backfilling as necessary to get a little bit of dirt back in there along the bank to try to uniform the ditch back up, and then place riprap over the top of it. I roughed some quick numbers in here to figure this out, and I assume it's gonna run anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to complete this repair. And this would be outside the scope of what the county would be able to perform with riprap being involved. So I'd suggest going out to an outside contractor and directing me to solicit that contractor.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Kim.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been moved and seconded to do this repair on district number 5. Further discussion? Hearing none. Kim?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Kim?
I'm not sure. Am I supposed to vote on that? It's on my property.
I'd
It's a
get-
drainage district.
It'd probably be worth abstaining, just.
I'm out.
And Bill is aye.
When they bust up all those dams, do they trap the beavers at all or try to, or?
No,
I want to.
that's part of the problem.
You would wear a beaver coat.
But-
He'd look good in it. I've seen it.
Some of these, there are
That's not
people
what he
that are
wears
trying to
for beavers.
trap these beavers. I think Todd Wee said he saw a dead one on one of these districts here the other day. And then the one that I brought to you guys last week, I know that somebody was actively trying to get some of those ones trapped as well. So the hope is that they're getting taken care of, but I guess if the trustees want to, we could, direct somebody to go try to trap these as well, but I really don't know what that would cost. It's not worth it purely for me to say, call up the local trapper and say, hey, you want to go catch these beavers? Because, well, the hides might be worth $50 on a good day if they're lucky. And by the time they make a couple trips out there, it probably doesn't pay for their gas. So they have to get paid additional by the drainage district on the side if we do want to consider having somebody go trap these. I guess my suggestion on going to trap them would be, you know, all these, I guess, get put into our work order system. If I see that, you know, 3 months, you know, it's like we went and spent $2,000 to remove 3 dams 3 months ago, and now it's 3 months later and the dams are back. Well, then that's when we probably want to start considering this. But I guess for what it's worth on these 3 or these 2 that came up, these are the first times that they came up, at least while I was here. You know, I'm sure there's been beaver dams on them before. The other thing is it's been especially dry. We haven't had super wet weather, so the dams aren't blowing out naturally, and these beavers have had time to build them up and make them extra strong. So yeah, they're fortified. So
Well, that's the reason I asked when I started on city council across the street. We used to hire, I don't even know who it was anymore. Like the beaver market fell out or something.
the whole entire fur
Hell,
market, yeah.
going for what then?
We could probably raise our bounty. We have a bounty on beavers.
We do not, no.
We don't?
No.
We paid that.
Yeah, it was just a
Other
random
counties
question.
too, we had a whole beaver discussion.
Yeah, if-
I'm not kidding, we did, we had a whole, didn't we?
If we wanted to pursue a bounty, we'd want to bring in like Chris LaRue or Mike Hawkins or somebody with the DNR to kind of discuss the ins and outs of that, because they would know more about it. But it is something other counties have done in the past. I think the biggest problem that a lot of these counties see is, well, did you catch this beaver in Dickinson County, or did you go catch it in, you know, Jackson County, Iowa, and you caught 300 of them and you brought them to Dickinson County and you got $50 a piece, you know?
You gotta prove residency. That is a problem. Most.
Like beaver.
I think you need to lobby the anti-fur market.
Oh, bite your tongue, Bill, bite your tongue.
Jeff wants a coat. Jeff wants a beaver.
He looks good.
And the hat.
We could subsidize Russia to coming.
All
see if they want
that's
our
about
furs.
enough.
Yeah,
That's
we've
what the
been
big
here
fur
to-
market in all this, so.
Here we go.
That's a number.
Do you have
Things have
anything
dropped
else
off.
for us, Cole?
What was that?
Anything else for us?
No, that is it.
Okay,
Merry Christmas.
well,
Yeah,
you
thank
and your
Merry
wife have
Christmas
a
to you
Merry
guys, too. It
Christmas.
sounds like I'll get to see you on the 27th, so.
Go stand.
We got the bowl game in there somewhere?
30.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the Huskers?
Okay.
Clockwise or counterclockwise rotation? That's the only
Next on the
question.
agenda,
Yeah.
item number 14, general discussion and board and
Attended the township trustee meeting. We had a productive meeting, I thought. A great job led by our county engineer Cole and our weed commissioner Tanner. It's good to see 2 young guys out in front really leading the way. And I know it was appreciated by the trustees, because I heard from a few of them that were here. We talked about a number of goals and topics and had good conversation. I then attended the Hunger Coalition meeting. Lake Park had a record number of attendees in November for food. Milford Pantry served 79 households, 159 people. Terrell, we had 30 families, served 40 people. We're continuing to do that work. Upper Des Moines continues to be extremely busy, setting records with numbers of folks that are coming by the pantries. We, as a Hunger Coalition, are investigating ways to help support the countywide backpack programs at the schools, and preparing for Christmas, the Christmas meals. We did have a donor leave a large amount of money to both Meals on Wheels and Hunger Coalition. I can't report more than that at this point because we don't know percentages, but it all happened because of an event that was held at West O, and they happened to overhear what was going on and made a large donation. Just one of those really cool things. The Shield meeting, we're continuing working on classes and seminars. Approved the budget. I sent it out to everybody. The new assessment is up about $2,900 over the last 3 years. It had not changed in the last 3 years, and that included his salary. Insurance was their big thing they got nailed with down there. But I sent that out to Lori as well. Attended an online budget webinar that Lori sent me on House File 718. I actually watched it a couple of times. Explaining the new procedures that counties need to use for budgeting. It's very interesting and it's going to test us for sure, but I kind of understand what's going on with it now. Attended the P and Z meeting yesterday. There were discussions about wind turbine and hazardous pipeline ordinances. Went on for about 2.5 hours. My hat is off to the subcommittee who's working on those ordinances for us. I think we're getting close to or something I hope we can take a look at, for both. P and Z also made a motion for a recommendation to our board about a property use. That is my report.
Thank you.
I know.
Tim,
Well, I thought the trustee meeting went well after our meeting last week. That was good. Since then, what else did I do? Trustee meeting, oh, I too attended the planning and zoning meeting yesterday, and I do appreciate the work that they did. Jim Bloom did something I haven't seen for years. He actually drew something to scale. Has anybody seen anybody draw anything by hand to scale anymore? I thought it was very good information that they shared too. I really appreciate their efforts.
Let's see, I went to, last week I was down and out, but yesterday I did, the veterans meeting yesterday morning, and they are submitting a couple different ideas to Beck Engineering to come up with varying ideas and see what would work. And we're gonna meet again, I believe, January 15th, 17th. 17th, and see what they have come back with. I was gonna go to DD 22 at the City of Spirit Lake at noon, didn't make that one. We got a security meeting tomorrow at 11. And I believe recycling on Thursday. So that's, yeah. So.
excellent. Well, I too went to the township meeting and also the veterans meeting. It's tricky. We have some drainage problems we need to take care of out here. And of course, the veterans want their statues and whatnot put in the right place. And well, what happens if the contractor can take care of the drainage, but the veterans aren't ready to get their statues up? You know, and what do we do with those big blocks of granite while things are being repaired around the tower? Where I mean, that they're not light. They're so there's just all these things that come up.
Yes.
And I think what he's saying, it's gonna take some coordination between supervisors and the veterans to make sure this is done properly, and probably over a period of time that maybe more than they're considering right now. So.
Right. So anyway, that's what I did. Anything for the good of the cause.
I was 30 when I sat down for this meeting. Jordan was good for it.
About anything I had.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'd take a motion to adjourn. Okay, Kim has moved.
I'll second.
Jeff has seconded. Further discussion? Of course not. Thank you, Jeff.
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And Bill is aye. We are officially adjourned at 12:37. Merry Christmas, all of you. Oh, you're welcome.
Happy